This is the Literary License Podcast with your hosts, Vicky Ray, John Wilson, and Keith Shorgo. Discussing book to screen and everything in between. Coming at you from the UK and USA.
They keep it real.
Whatever made you choose Stepford?
I didn't. Walter did.
Ah, yeah, it figures. Dave brought us here because of land values. He's best in bed when the market's up. A messy kitchen. It's beautiful. A home away from home. Oh, my. It doesn't compare to mine. You haven't got any of those magnificent peanut butter handprints all over your cabinets yet. You're new here, and Stepford wasn't ruined in a day. Hello, hi, Steve.
Maybe you could take this one.
Oh. Well, I find that the African-American experience for me has been, for the most part, very good. Although, I find it difficult to go into detail as I haven't had much desire to leave the house in a while.
We've become such homebodies.
Yes, but even when you go into the city, I've just had no interest. The chores have become my sanctuary.
It's gotten to you now.
Nothing's got me. I just want to look like a woman and keep my house looking decent, too.
Seizures create anxiety, which can trigger aggression.
Yeah, but like randomly attacking other people?
Well, it's not random. You know, it was your flash. That's what set him off. Hey.
Well,
How's he doing?
Give you coffee. When I was just going to give you coffee. I thought we were friends. I thought we were friends. I was just going to give you coffee. I was just going to give you coffee. I thought we were friends. I thought we were friends. I thought we were friends. How could you do a thing like that? I thought we were friends.
Hello, welcome to the Literary License Podcast. And today we're going to be discussing the 1975 classic film Stepford Wives and the 2017 film Get Out. And today we have with us John Wilson. Say hello, John.
Howdy, folks.
And Vicky's not with us because she's out being a great-great-grandmother to her grandchild that's today in Tulsa, Oklahoma, while he's out racing. Yes, poor Vicky. You know, a mother at 10 and great-great-great-grandmother at the age of 98. So, in all seriousness, folks, yeah, she's not with us this week, but she will be with us next week for Marnie and our Shudder episode.
I told her she has to bake us some cookies like a good Stepford wife.
Yeah, if anyone needs to go to Stepford, it's Vicky. So... So, John, what have you been up to in the last couple of weeks since we've seen you?
Oh, I mean, I've been in work, the throes of work, long hours, but here and there I've been trying to enjoy, as Keith and I were just talking about, Kingdom Hearts 3, which has been a new obsession for me in a gaming sense of mine. I've also been watching a bunch of really good trailers that just dropped. Pet Sematary, the original obviously was in 1989, but the new one dropped a second trailer with a big sort of twist to the story. I don't want to give anything away, so for those of you who want to watch it, go watch it. That comes out in April, and then Child's Play just actually dropped a trailer. So a teaser, I should say. It's not really a trailer, but the direction I think they're going is quite interesting because the director's kind of moving away from the whole voodoo aspect of, or the magical or mystical aspect of Charlie Lee Ray possessing the doll to then possess, the child. In this, it's actually artificial intelligence, and what it seems to be is almost like the doll imprints on Andy, and it really holds true to the phrase "we're friends to the end," and what the doll would do to protect Andy or be a part of Andy's life in order to kind of manipulate and kill to be in his life. So I think that's very interesting. And then the last trailer was Us, which is the next film that's Jordan Peele is coming out March 22nd. It looks very twisted and dark, so I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I've actually watched that trailer for Us. Actually, Child's Play. That's one of those. It's going to be wait to see what they do with it. But my only concerns about Child's Play is that I quite liked the last couple of sequels that they did, and it's kind of shame that they're not pressing forward after, especially Cult of Chucky was so good.
Yeah.
But we'll see what they do, and I'm keeping my thing. I know that they are making a TV series of Child's Play as well. I know that's in production now.
Interesting. I wonder if they're off. It must be from the same studio, because for them to kind of do that in tandem. And I would also say it's very interesting because they did a little video from the tech company that builds the doll, and they're more of like an Apple in a way, but like they build drones, they build security systems. So I'm wondering if it's also like the wrong protocol gets downloaded into a doll who becomes like a defense doll. That's like, and with the series, you can kind of add the layers to that story and kind of like use, if they're using the same doll, to be like, this is how far it can go, and the doll can actually control other dolls or other things in your home, which could lead to a whole tech thing, like an extension of the doll.
I mean, it's going to be a odd thing, because I think like with the Friday the 13th, but the Nightmare on Elm Street reboot, because they didn't have the original Freddy Krueger, Robert Englund, come back, they had a different actor. I think that's why that film suffered a lot, because people wanted Robert Englund. So with the new Chucky, it'd be interesting if people are willing to have a new Chucky voice instead of Brad Dourif, who's been doing it all these years. So it'll be interesting to see where they go forward with it. I know the TV series that is currently in pre-production or in production, I'm not quite sure, which is coming to Netflix, is that it's got the original team who's been doing all of the Chucky films, the original producers and the original director and the original writers, and they got all of them coming back to do this TV series. So it'll be interesting if it was going to be a continuation of the Child's Play that we've known, or are they going to forward with the new film that's coming out, and they're going to use that, or are they going to find somewhere in between? Or
I mean, it'd be interesting if they do continue the cult version of it, because then it's more comedic beat. I don't think that they're going that direction with the remake of the. I don't even know if you would call it reimagining, because it seems like it's not going even that route at all, and it's going to be darker, more. And like almost like imagine Age of Ultron, where it's like something that's really trying to either protect the child, and it could also eventually have a Pinocchio concept, right? Like eventually it becomes so evolved that it actually wants to be Andy. Like
wants to be a real boy.
Yeah. So it could be interesting where they go with that. And I'm hoping that if they go that direction with the film, then maybe the series, they do continue Cult of Chucky, because it leaves you on a major cliff, right? There's so much that they left open that you can explore. And imagine now taking that out into America, right? You're literally like small town this, and then this happens, or big city this happens. They could go that route.
Yeah, I kind of do. I mean, I think just with me personally, I kind of wish they would still continue doing what they're doing, because You know, they brought Andy back. Jennifer Tilly's back in there.
Tilly.
They brought the girl back from Child's Play 2 back into it. There were plans to bring some of the cast from Child's Play 3 back into it. And
because like wasn't the girl who was dating Andy or was part of that school, she didn't die, so she could come back if they brought that character back, you know.
Well, they brought the one girl back from the second one, so I mean that was her at the end of the Cult of Chucky. If you haven't seen it, sorry for spoiling that for you. That's what we do here. We spoil everything.
We spoil it all.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's one of those ones I will go see because I do like the Child's Play films. I have to sit there and say that out of all the horror franchises, Child's Play's storyline is probably the most consistent out of all of them.
Yeah.
You know, so. But I also think that has to do with all of them except for Bride of Chucky and Seed of Chucky all have the same directors and producers and writers.
Yeah. I just think that they kind of, to me, the only thing I didn't like about Child's Play is like the obsession with Andy. It's like, get over it. Just get another kid. Like, you're literally getting killed over and over and over again. It's like, get over it. Like, just move on. Like, that to me was like hard.
But I think that had to do with like it being in the 80s. I think that's that 80s trope thing. It's like, you know, it's a bit like Michael Myers. I mean, I know that he came back for the new Halloween again, and he's going after Laurie Strode again. And it kind of made sense when you had that family thing going on that they did. But now that they discontinued that family thing, you're thinking, why isn't he just going after different people? Why is it always Laurie Strode? Why? I mean, there's plenty of babysitters out there you can kill. I mean, I have a whole list of people you can kill. I can say,
or is it the one that got away thing? Like, you think it's that because like if you think of like a serial killer aspect, I think now going back to like Charles Lee Ray, the one that got away, isn't that more of a like a need to like finish or that off?
I still think it's in movie world, I think it's, it helps make sure that it, helps put your brand together and it keeps, your main characters together. And
having a hero and a villain,
I mean, that's what Friday the 13th suffered a bit from, is that they really needed, people wanted these people to come back. But of course, when you made a Friday the 13th movie in the 80s, I mean, it wasn't the best thing on your, at that time, wasn't considered the best thing on your CV. So they wouldn't come back.
Yeah.
I mean, Adrienne King came back, but they killed her off because of her stalker problems. But, but people did want to see Amy Steele come back from 2 and Kimberly Beck come back from the 4th one. And
I mean, there's a lot of people who survived in the Friday the 13th, at least, 2 people or 1 or 2 people per movie. So you could technically.
But when they did come back, they always came back as different actors. I mean, one turned in who is it? The Corey Feldman's character. Yeah, Corey Feldman. Yeah. The next movie he comes back as John Boy Walton, and the next one he comes back as Tom Matheson. What I mean? So you kind of go, okay,
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I guess we could be thankful that Laurie Strode has always been played by Jamie Lee Curtis. So
that's true. For now, I mean, you never know how that will.
Yeah.
Well, they did that. I mean, they did a remake with her character and that was, to me, a nightmare. The first one was good, but the Rob Zombie version, like this second one, was just so horrible.
Well, I think Rob Zombie's problem is his wife, Sherry Moon Zombie. He's got to stop. I mean, I think she was fine in Halloween, but I think the second one suffers when you have dream sequences and you keep shoving your wife back in for no apparent reason.
Riding on a white horse and,
Yeah. Precisely.
It's almost like Tim Burton with his wife. It's like, enough, for God's sakes.
Well, they're doing a Devil's Rejects 2 at the moment, so it'll be interesting. Yeah, so, well, at least his wife comes back for that one. So, very pretty. I do sometimes think that her acting sometimes is a little bit limited. So, but she's very good in Devil's Rejects. I'll give her that. So,
nice.
What I've been up to, I watched this fantastic show on Netflix. I urge everyone to see it, called Russian Doll.
Oh, yay! I haven't watched it yet. I want to watch it.
It's fantastic. Natasha Lyonne is fantastic. The story is fantastic. It's 8 episodes. Each episode is about 25 minutes long. I made the horrible mistake of watch 1 or 2 of these because I need to watch something in the short before I go to bed. I was up to 3 o'clock in the morning on a work night, watched the thing, and loved it. And interesting enough that what I always do once I watch something I love, I have to like investigate it on it. And I noticed that most of the cast that are in there are going to be back this year in a TV series of Tales of the City by Armistead Maupin.
Nice.
They're making a new series of it, and they're starting from book 1. It's just wrapped up, so that means we'll probably get about May, June time, and they're starting in March. They are filming further Tales of the City before it even comes out. So they're gonna, I guess, Olympia Dukakis came back, and Laura Linney's come back, and
nice.
And even the one who played what's his name? He went into Due South, the Canadian actor, Paul Gross. He's come back as well. So
very cool.
And then of course I've been doing Kingdom Hearts, which I'm totally in love with. It's rocked my world, and I'm coming to the last stages of that. So I probably got another 3 or 4 hours of that to play, and I know I'm going to be really depressed after that. And like Russian Doll ruined me, for the simple fact is that now I can't find anything I want or can want as great as that show. Kingdom Hearts is going to be like, oh my God, I need something as great as that. I do have Red Dead Redemption 2, so I'll probably start playing that way. But
it's funny. My friend was telling me about Red Redemption, was saying how he's like upset. He's the same thing. He's obsessed with it. He's obsessed with he's got like 6 horses. And he's like, you don't understand. You like bond with the horse, and there's a whole bonding thing. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, I play hours and hours and hours of time playing Red Dead Redemption. Right. Yeah.
I'm hoping I can get into that. I mean, I'm still got Assassin's Creed Odyssey, which is fantastic, but unlike a game like Witcher or some of the other games, I'm not totally invested in my character. Though he's very good looking, he has sex with all these men and women in it. So, but
is that Witcher's going to say they're making into the series, which my friend is actually working on Netflix with Henry Cavill.
Yeah. If they stick to the computer game storyline, it should be a great series. I mean, I have to start and say Witcher is free, which I think Witcher 4, the computer game, is coming out later on this year. But Witcher 3 is probably one of the best games I played. I was really into it.
Nice.
I love my character. All their sexual. I always got them into like sexual situations because that's what I do. Because I'm a pervert.
Well, I heard Odyssey. Was it Odyssey had a huge like story arc line, a gay story arc line between 2 of the main characters, and I was like, oh, and I watched the whole thing, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool that they kind of followed through with each of the,
Yeah, well, Mass Effect did that as well,
Yeah.
So I mean, it's you can take your character and make him really gay or really straight, or mine's Assassin's Creed's bi. He's a trisexual. He'll try anything. So
he'll try a wildebeest. He'll try anything.
Sleeping with the boars and sleeping with the bears. Yeah. Women, men, pigeons. So, but outside of that, I haven't really been up to a lot. Actually, working a lot, and and keeping and then I'm starting to put together stuff for like season 3 and getting because that's going to take about 6 months to get all that stuff together. So that's about it, really. So
nice.
Well, that now brings us to Stepford Wives. Now, the interesting thing about Stepford Wives, it started out in 1972. It's a satirical thriller written by Ira Levin, the same person who wrote Rosemary's Baby, Boys from Brazil, Kiss Before Dying, Sliver, and, of course, the ill-fated, horrible Son of Rosemary sequel. Not the movie sequel, but the book sequel. So, but the interesting thing about Stepford Wives, it was a multi-million-dollar bestseller, the book was. And, of course, in 1975, it would become an American science fiction horror film, which would be directed by Bryan Forbes and screenplay by William Goldman, and would star Katharine Ross, Paula Prentiss, and Peter Masterson. Now, there is a bit of an Easter egg in the film Stepford Wives. If you look closely at the daughter, you'll notice that the daughter is the real-life daughter of Peter Masterson. And she would grow up to do great films like Some Kind of Wonderful and Fried Green Tomatoes. That's Mary Stuart Masterson. And she does have that Jodie Foster vibe going on as a child. So,
yeah.
But Well, it was quite good. I mean, the film was a moderate success at the time of release, but it's now considered a cult classic over the years. And the Stepford Wives is one of those weird films that would make such an impact that is now considered, it's now in the dictionaries as Stepford Wives, meaning overly domesticated or docile. Oh, she's a Stepford wife. So it has entered the American language as, description and entered into our dictionaries. Another interesting thing about Stepford Wives is that it's one of these films that would actually spawn off a lot of stuff afterwards. Get Out, which we're covering. Disturbing Behaviors, another film that came out with James Marsden back in the late 90s with the 90s horror boom. And there's been lots of films. Universal Soldier takes a little bit of a nod to Stepford Wives about making the ultimate soldier. And they also did sequels, and the sequels they varied. The interesting thing about the sequels is they always had like a really good cast, but sometimes the scripts would vary. Return to Stepford Wives was a TV movie with Sharon Glass and Julie Kavanaugh. Julie Kavanaugh from The Simpsons. She's the voice of Meg. Marge Simpson, not Maggie. Marge Simpson, and she's also was in Rhoda. And it would bring and Don Johnson was in the sequel before Miami Vice. And then we had Stepford Husbands, which would have Donna Mills in it and Michael Onkeen, which were big names in the early 90s at that time. And then we had the Stepford Children, which had Barbara Eden in it and Lori Loughlin and all these 80 teenagers in it that would go on to do like Beverly Hills 90210, Melrose Place, et cetera. Out of all of those, I did watch those today, and I would sit there and say Return to Stepford Wives continues on with the story. That does a very good job for a TV movie. Stepford Children had that 80s TV vibe to it, and Stepford Wives came out in like 1991, so it's Donna Mills after Knots Landing. So yeah, it wasn't great. Let's just say I fell asleep, folks, and we're starting this podcast a half an hour late because I was on contact. Yeah, so
he was in a Stepford coma.
Yeah. But to get that, I mean, I found what's interesting is that with Ira Levin, as I was saying before, and if you listen to the Rosemary's Baby episode, was that I have a problem with Ira Levin, and my problem with Ira Levin is that every time I have to read one Ira Levin book, it's like Pringles potato chips. I can't stop at one. I had to go back and reread all his books all over again because he's fantastic. Nice. He was the forerunner of Michael Crichton. Michael Crichton came up with Westworld because of Ira Levin. He was the forerunner of, Stephen King. Stephen King became a horror writer because of Rosemary's Baby. He was the forerunner of, political thrillers. John Grisham would write because of Ira Levin. Some of the biggest authors that we have today can all take their hats off and say they were inspired by Ira Levin. And, I have to say that even A Kiss Before Dying, his first book, if you see the movie versions of them, Ira Levin's probably the only novelist that I know that when they take his books, it's almost word for word in the movies. And I don't know,
Yeah, that's rare too, because usually often the screenwriters come in and it's like they chop out, they take out ancillary characters and they, insert other characters or just change the overall formula of the film to kind of fit Hollywood rather than the book. So that's big kudos right there.
I know, and I'd sit there and say that Ira Levin, if you're out there reading stuff and you never read Ira Levin, I suggest starting with his first book, Kiss Before Dying, which was made into they made two films out of it. One with Sean Ward and Matt Dillon in the 80s, and the original with Robert Wagner in his first role. But yeah, and just continue reading him. He's a fantastic writer. So, and as far as the movie is concerned, Diane Keaton was up for the main role. But she turned it down because her analyst didn't like the script. Then Joanna Cassidy was going to be cast as Bobby, but she left a few weeks in production, and her scenes were reshot with Paula Prentiss, which I think Paula Prentiss is fantastic.
She is, yeah.
I love Paula Prentiss. I mean, she's one of these people I could actually see more and more of.
Yeah.
And Tuesday Weld initially accepted the role of Joanna, but she canceled before filming began. So Katharine Ross came in, and then we had Paula Prentiss. And what's also interesting that there's quite a few interesting cast choices in this. Dee Wallace, the mother from E.T., is one of the Stepford Wives. If you look in the background, that's her. That's quite interesting. And of course, Dee Wallace now is probably, she does a lot of great horror films now. They always bring her back, and her career is still going. God bless her. And of course, we did have Ginger Grant, Tina Louise from Gilligan's Island in it as well. So. But the only character who would come back would be the Joanna character, the character that Tina Louise plays, and her character would come back in the Stepford Children, played by another actress. But most of the characters, as far as the sequels go, never really do come.
Oh, Charmaine.
Charmaine, yeah. So Charmaine,
who was a tennis playing ball. She was a tennis wife, basically.
Well, the funny thing about Tina Louise is that this is the second film I've seen her in the last week. Because when we were doing Rosemary's Baby, I did watch the TV. They did a bad TV movie sequel to it, and Tina Louise was in that. And then now we got Tina Louise in this. So I had like quite a week of couple weeks of
Tina Louise.
I haven't thought about her for years, not since Dallas. So. But what about you, John? Do you have anything to add about the making or the production of Stepford?
Yeah. I mean, director Bryan Forbes purposely chose like white and bright colors in the setting of the film, attempting to kind of make a thriller in the sunlight. So that, I think, is sort of during that time very revolutionary, because most of the thrillers were set in darker tones. He deliberately chose to do lighter tones, with the exception, obviously, of the finale, which is like set in a stormy night. Then that, part of the other thing that I've noticed, or a little tidbit I noticed, is that like Goodman and Forbes had creative differences of what the film should be. Even one being the ending, in which Forbes had toned it down, apparently. I would have been very interested to see what was written and what he chose for the ending of it. But I know that I think Forbes wanted to Goodman wanted to over-sexualize the women, and Forbes was the one who kind of brought it down because, and again, I would have loved to seen sort of the contrasting difference of that, because as we'll get into sort of the film, it's not overtly, these women don't seem overtly different, because you go from, woman comes from city life to suburb life. It's not overtly different, but if she walked into a room and all these women were wearing lingerie or were dressed that way, I'm sure she would have been like, what the hell is going on? So it would have completely changed the tone of the film. So I wondered, what the reason was, if it was just that he just didn't have those sort of same views. But I felt that was very interesting, that there was friction between these two in a creative aspect of the storytelling.
It's quite funny because it does stay in the script, because there are a couple of instances in there where they do mention, oh, your breasts are big, bit more bosomy, or you're wearing, when one of the characters changes over, oh, you're wearing a new padded push-up bra, and what I mean. But I have to sit there and when we get into the movie, when Joanna, the robot, the new Joanna comes through, her boobs are bigger.
Yeah, and pointier, like they were like blink.
Because I mean, Katharine Ross, I wasn't very well endowed, but her robot was well endowed. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
She kind of was more Barbie-ish.
Yeah.
So it sounds like the
Goodman.
He didn't get what he wanted, but obviously they can change the script because there's all in there.
Yeah. Good. Well, and I think you almost have to have compromise, right? But I would have loved to seen like what the ending was and what it could have been, because I was actually trying to see if I could find the original script or the first or second drafts, and I couldn't find it.
Yeah, I just wondered, maybe it'd be interesting. Maybe it was just more violent, because the violence.
Oh, it could have. Yeah.
The killing of Joanna might have been more violent, because it kind of cuts away, doesn't it? So maybe it's a more violent ending. Maybe that's how it was. Yeah. I can't picture sex being in the final part of it, really.
Oh, that's true. Or it could be the interaction between the husband and her, and it could have been like sexualized, like that one. What's the other character? It was like, you're the king. Yeah.
You're the master of my universe.
You're the master. You're the king.
Oh, you're wonderful. Anything else to add about the making of?
No, that's about it.
Well, before we get to the trailer, what I'm going to do is give you a quick synopsis. The Stepford Wives is the story of Joanna Egbert, a photographer and young mother who begins to suspect that the frighteningly submissive housewives in her new idyllic Connecticut neighborhood may be robots created by their husbands. So what we're going to do is cut to a trailer, and we'll be right back.
Morning face. You get it when you don't sleep well. This is what happened to Linda.
Morning, guys.
Good morning. Ah, what is that thing?
It's me, Linda.
Oh my God, it talks! Run!
No, it's me, Linda from HR.
It looks hungry! Save the children! Save them! Stay back, I've got mace!
Ow, that went in my eyes.
Quit moving!
It's called beauty sleep for a reason. And there's never been a better time to get some.
Get 20% off IKEA Sultan mattresses. IKEA, love your home.
The Great Cataclysm, which nearly wiped out all of humanity, forced the formation of the city within the walls. It has survived for 350 years now.
Do they know we have Ceres? Pretty sure that's their assumption.
It has done so by way of law, provided by the Council.
Is he in a safe location? They're not gonna find him if that's what you're asking.
The Enforcer has always been the Council's strength, but now that Ceres is missing, the law is vulnerable.
Good. Keep me up to date. I need to know everything. Yes, sir. Did you happen to catch the council meeting today? No, sir, I did not. Well, I was there.
It doesn't help that Sorel has taken it upon himself to appoint the 17-year-old Dayton in Ceres' stead.
Council is mad because Sorel claimed an emergency which has given him ultimate power. He's appointed Dayton to Enforcer, overlooking Theron, James, and the other two who are trained with Dayton. It seems he wants to keep the title Enforcer in the Sorel family. So your plan is working then?
This cannot go on, Theron. Sorel needs to be stopped.
Yes, it's working perfectly. The council will destroy themselves. We'll just take over. This city belongs to us.
Listen to The City Within the Walls on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, Podbean, or go straight to the source for the podcast, music, and more at joshmonroseprojectalpha.com/The City Within the Walls. Again, that's joshmonroseprojectalpha.com/The City Within the Walls.
In the town of Stepford, the men are getting exactly what they always dreamed of. Perfect wives, and the dream is becoming a nightmare for the Stepford Wives. A very modern suspense story from the author of Rosemary's Baby. The Stepford Wives, about what men can do behind closed doors.
They were telling me about the men's association. Right now, it's strictly men only.
Not to mention that creepy men's association.
We moved here about 2 months ago. And Ed joins this men's association. Anything that gets him out of the house nights is fine with me.
I like to watch women doing little domestic chores.
You came to the right town. I want to please him now. I'll just die if I don't get this recipe. It took me so long to get the upstairs floor to shine.
Charmaine's changed, Carol Van Zandt's changed, and so have all those other women's club members.
I'm getting the hell out of Stepford.
Bobby, it's gotten to you now.
I just want to look like a woman.
And you're not going to leave Stepford either, are you?
Leave Stepford? Charmaine changed. Carol Van Zandt changed.
She's changed. And stop telling me I'm crazy.
You see somebody, you get some help. You see a psychiatrist.
I think the men in the association are behind it. And my time is coming.
Everybody's out looking for me, so don't panic.
I want my children!
Where are they?
Charmaine changed. Bobby changed.
And my time is coming.
Columbia Pictures and Palomar Pictures present Katharine Ross and Paula Prentiss in The Stepford Wives.
Oh, no.
A very modern suspense story from the author of Rosemary's Baby, rated PG.
So, welcome back. So, John, why don't we start a discussion of The Stepford Wives? What do you think of The Stepford Wives?
I actually loved it because it was always on my list of movies to see. So I'm glad that you, Keith, had picked this film. I saw the remake, which was, with Nicole Kidman and a bunch of other characters, Bette Midler.
That was horrible.
It was horrible. Now, I didn't think it was as horrible until I saw the original. So when you see the original, it's very, it's more toned down and real. Whereas I feel like the remake is very almost cartoonish in the caricatures of the characters and stuff. So there's, you go from one extreme to another. But going to the original, I like that there is. It's almost like a slow burn. You have, Joanne coming from a city life to now a suburb life and trying to adjust to that. And, her character and the way she interacts with the people in the town, it's subtle. It's like little things start to pop up and then that burn gets stronger and stronger. And so by the end of the film, you just have this raging inferno. And I kind of like that. I kind of like that it didn't just throw you into it and you're like, what's going on? You kind of, you're settling into this town just like she is settling into the town with her husband. I would say one of the, issues that I had was that I didn't understand whether or not the husband knew whether or not this town was this way. And he deliberately picked the town to kind of transform his wife. Because I didn't think she was all that bad. If she was just some raging feminist who was just literally going off kilter on everything he said and did, I think there would be more clout as to why he would, allow things to happen. That was, I think, one of the biggest things for me with the film, with his character was like, what would make you just be like, here, like take her away,
I think that. Rewatching it today, because I always had the same question you did. And I had to say I've seen this movie tons and tons of times. And I think this is probably the first time I actually sat down and actually studied it more than I normally would. Doing the podcast, you end up watching these films and actually seeing it more. You end up watching it more earnestly than I normally would watch a film. And I noticed certain things in it that pointed to, I think that he planned this, because when he's moved in, he's taking his dog for a walk and he sees the Van Sant neighbor with Nanette Newman's, he goes, does she look as good as she cooks? Or something along that lines.
Yeah.
And he gives him that knowing look. And I thought to myself, you just moved in the area. That's an odd thing to say to someone that you don't know, first of all.
Yeah.
And then she has an argument with him. And it's like, you picked this house and you told me about it afterwards and asked me what I thought about it after you put the down payment on it. So it's obviously, so to me, I think that he went in and he thought that this would be good. I think, let's be honest, I think Stepford in 1970s America, this is probably like the first gated community. This gated community started taking off after this. But I think he probably knew. I'm not sure how much he knew, because obviously when he found out what's entailed, he was he got drunk, didn't he, when he found out what it entailed.
To the extent, extent of what he would have to do. Yeah.
But I think that, I think his problem basically is that, especially for the time of the story this is set in. And basically what we have here is, we got this group of people who would have grown up in the 50s, and let's sit there and they had the idyllic 1950s childhood with the mom and their apron, having dinner cooked and baking baked goods and this whole idea going on. Mm-hmm. And then they get into their 20s and they marry, and of course women's lives sorted out taking place, and your wife isn't that. And maybe, and I don't know if that's why I don't know if the story would actually work today too much, because if you modernize it, it's going to actually lose a lot. I think this is a story of its time.
Yeah.
I mean, if our generation made the Stepford Wives, I'm not. What's going to be our idyllic? I mean, most of our parents had to work. You know what I mean? And
yeah, and I would also say that divorce is something that is more accepted now than it was back then. So you didn't have the alternative to be like, well, I'm just going to leave her to go get the hot young whatever, you know, and you're going to, you know.
Well, definitely. I mean, when my parents divorced in 1972, and when we changed schools, we were the only kids divorced parents. Now, of course, by the time I finished school, we went from being a minority to being a majority. But, you know, between 72 to 82, those 10 years, the landscape started changing a lot. So, but I think at the time, what you're saying about divorce, divorce is something you just didn't do because there was a bit of shame still at the time.
Yeah. And especially if you had children, you know, it's sort of, you know, I could see a town like this doing what they do because you want to maintain that image of a happy family, right? So the kids are happy, but even the kids are a little bit Stepford, right? Because when, you know, the kids get on the bus, the kids seemed very like not normal at all. They seemed like children of the corn. They all just looked at the new kids like, who the hell are you? You know, and you know, they get on. One
of the kids has a nightmare about going back to school and says she doesn't like it there. So you don't really know what's going on with the kids. I mean, they're a little bit with Stepford Wives, and when we get out, there are a lot of plot holes that don't seem to be covered up at all, not even fakely covered up. They're just kind of left there gaping. And what we have with the Stepford Wives is like, what happens with obviously with the Stepford Wives, and I was talking about this with Isaac last night, and though we do have a form of the Stepford Wives still today, to the simple point that, you know, everything has to be, you know, you do got people who have everything has to be perfect. You have to have a perfect woman, and what that means for today. But with the Stepford Wives, what you don't really quite understand is that obviously when they move to Stepford, they already got to have their child years behind them. They can't have any more children. So, you know, and then what happens when they, you know, then when they turn into a Stepford Wives and they come back home, what happens with the whole kids? Now, I know the dog is they take the dog away so it can feel its way around like the new Joanna. So obviously that happens, though it doesn't happen for one of the other characters. So obviously, I guess I don't know what happened to the big sheepdog, because that big sheepdog didn't, you know, Paula Prentiss's character Bobby's character didn't miss their dog. But but you don't really know about you never see what happens with the children. How did the children react to this new mom? Yeah, that's true. Yeah, like you don't know how they would interact with the mom, the new mom. Yeah. Yeah, so you don't have that. Another thing is like with the mom, the way that she is now, being, you know, okay, yeah, your house might be clean and she's baking a lot more, and you got 3-round meals are concerned. But what's she going to be like if the child is bad, you know, and needs to be corrected? Yeah. How is she going to handle that? Because we don't know that aspect of it. And another aspect we don't know is what happens to the girls once they become teenagers. Oh, yeah. And they're going to start acting out, and, you know, or ask questions because they're kind of programmed to be like, you know, it seems like what sets them off too, the robot stuff, is like, it's like, just say or, you know, do anything that's out of their programming, and it just like they start glitching, you know. And it's like, what if the child's like, Mom, I had my period. Up. Yeah. So there, I mean, it did leave a lot of questions. I do have to sit there and say, with the Revenge of the Stepford Wives, the 1980 something movie that came out, the TV movie, they do change the Stepford Wives sort of thing. So it's, they go from robotic to biochemical. So they use drugs instead, and they use a hypnosis translation. They have to take this pill whenever the siren goes off. And it makes a bit more sense because now you're left with the real person. So, you know, and, you know, but I mean, the thing is, I'm not quite sure about when the robotics come in. I mean, I have to sit there and say these are fucking brilliant robotics for 1970s. I mean, I know the guy worked at Disney, but I mean, if anyone ever seen the animatronic of, you know, the Pirates of the Caribbean, or the animatronics of Abraham Lincoln, yes, they are very wonderful at the time, like in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, but you look at them now and it is kind of like those Santa Claus displays that kind of wave and move back and forth in a robotic way. But
I did like there was one scene where Joanna's driving and she's going by all these like tech companies. So it's like in a small town, yet right not too far away, there's all these like IBM, there's all these like tech companies that kind of alludes to the fact that they have the best of the best in the town to build the best of the best in the town, right? So it's like that. I actually glad they inserted that because I was like, so where are they getting all these materials? Where I was like, how are you building these people, these other people, robots, without really anyone knowing? And it's like the boys club. And then my other thought was, how many of the women were still women? Because there is a subtlety between the characters and not knowing, like again, if she walked in and all the women were dressed in these very scantily clad outfits, you'd be like, okay, she's been turned, like there's a subtlety to their appearance that doesn't really make it overt that there's something different, right? It's only until you know them, like, oh, well, Bobby would never say that, or Patricia would never say that. That's how she kind of started to see the subtleties because the outfits weren't overt.
I think the outfit solution is quite interesting because what you did have with the women, and I think this is why I think they are actually taking a nod from the 50s or the conservative 60s to a certain extent, because when you see Bobby and Joanna walking around, their clothes are fit a bit more snugly around, or you might see a midriff a little bit, or she'll tie her shirt up and sort of thing.
Or they didn't wear dresses; they wore jeans, right? So they weren't wearing actual dresses,
Well, and a lot of times it's almost like, when the men's club come and visit Joanna, she's not wearing a bra. She's got like nipple show through like massively.
Yeah,
which is kind of odd because you think I thought to myself, I was like, can't believe she's not wearing a bra with all these strange men in her house. You know what I mean, sort of thing. But so
she almost doesn't want to be there either. It's like she knows like her husband wants her to be there, and she's just like, okay, fine. And then what's his name is like just a big creepy sleaze. What the hell is his name? Dale. Patrick O'Neill's character, the mastermind, if you will, like he's just like creepy. He just and she I forget what line she says, but he says something to her, and she just kind of gives it right back to him. And I was like,
"Yeah, you work for
you're sassy.
You don't look like the kind of person that brings joy to others." I think
it was so good. I was like, "Yeah."
I found it. From what you're saying, it's like they were all like scantily dressed, but it seemed like it's almost like they had an aversion to, but maybe this has something to do with the burning of the bra situation, where women were a lot more sexual. They were showing their bodies more. And maybe this is a way to get them back so that they're not showing their bodies. Because, let's face it looked like the costume designer, Little House on the Prairie, did the costume design for here. They're all like prairie dresses and
they're almost like apron dresses, right? Because they had the whole ruffle thing, and they were just, they look like they're just always wearing an apron.
You remember like Holly Hobby? Remember there's Holly Hobby dolls? They were just like Holly Hobby.
Exactly. Yeah.
But then again, even the heels, the shoes that they're wearing, they're not high heels. They're like sensible heels.
Yeah.
They have like sensible heels with a little bit of a sling back sort of thing going for them. A lot of white patent leather as well.
Yeah. They probably had to have easy take on and take off clothes, just in case, the husband wanted a little afternoon delight.
Well, I can imagine. I could imagine like undressing them as a bit like trying to rape someone in the 1800s. Like, you got everything off, you're just exhausted. Coat off, that's off, and the slip, and the corset.
I have to say that scene where she comes in with Bobby, and first of all, they were like, there's no shock in their faces. They're like, oh, what's going on? Oh, good for her. Oh, wait, what? It's like, no, she needs to. Almost like you could feel her, Joanne, wanting to walk up and be like, "Girl, just don't stroke his ego."
Well, the funny thing, they're like this thing, and then later they go to the pharmacy, and she's going, Joanna, that's them.
I know. They're like, look.
She goes, I don't want to be mean or anything, but what's she doing with him?
Yeah, but pretty much though. She's like, look, I'm just saying, why? You know, what's that?
I mean, I think one of the things that the film missed out on, and is that it would have been nice to have another town gathering where you actually see, because you get all the men together and you had all the women together, but I think it would have been proved their point more if they had like a bunch of couples together and see the differences. Because what you had, I mean, the men in this are not good looking men. And there's something a bit, they're either really nerdy, kind of greasy, kind of like overage. They let themselves go whenever you see the men. Yeah. And then you see the women are all very beautiful, but you don't know who's matched up with who really. And it would be, I think if you had some scenes where they were matched up with each other.
The only one you saw was Charmaine, right? So Charmaine and her husband. I don't even think you even saw Bobby's husband, right? Like I don't remember seeing.
Well, her husband is Dave, because she sits there and said that, and Dave is, that you do see Dave at some point because he's part of the men's club that comes over to the house, but there's no recognition whatsoever and the only thing we know about Dave is that he's great in bed when the real estate rises. Sort of thing. Yeah, because she says that line about him. But I mean, even Joanna's husband's no great shakes of a lamb's tail. I mean,
But he seems like that's what I mean, is like he seems sympathetic, aside from the fact that he's, they make him as like overly worked, right? So because there's scenes where she's trying to talk to him and he's like either in a paper or he's reading something and he's like, I'm doing my job. What do you want? And, but it doesn't seem like they have a bad relationship. I think the only time he goes off on her is when he's drinking because he knows he's going to do what he's going to do to her. And he then just goes off kilter. Like, the house is a mess. It's a pig. And our kids look like they're homeless. Like, and then he just goes like full off on her. But there's no lead up to like, this is a dysfunctional marriage. If anything, they kind of have their little quips and quos like most relationships do. And it always results in like, they bang it out because like the one where he's like, okay, we can go. And she's like, really? He's like, yeah, if you're not happy, like they totally make up and bang it out. Like, it's not like it's like one of these like, oh, there's this friction. I actually would have liked it more that there was a constant buildup of friction because then that would have made sense why he would have just said, fine, like go ahead, take her and do this. Like he doesn't even try to stop her. Like what, it's kind of, it's messed up.
Well, it's almost like with Bobby as well. You don't really know what the mechanics of Bobby's relationship with her husband. I mean, we know that she's loud and boisterous and fun. I mean, if I was in Stepford, Bobby would be one of my friends. I'd hang out with Bobby.
Bobby was a cool character. Yeah.
But we don't really see the mechanics of the relationship there,
I know. And then she goes away and she comes back and, oh, we went to Bergdorf and, oh, it was just so amazing, Joanne. And you're like, oh my God. I actually loved that you got to see more of Bobby's character as who she was and then the aftermath of that. And that's where you're like, oh yeah, there's something really bad going on in this town.
Well,
Can I make you coffee?
I think that was, very, very clever. I mean, you got to see the downfall of being a Stepford Wife through the Nanette Newman or the next door neighbor's character, which is quite funny because Nanette Newman was actually, I think, married to Bryan Forbes at the time, and no one wanted to use her. Nanette Newman in this country used to advertise Fairy Liquid.
Oh God!
So this film, everyone looks at when they said Nanette Newman, everyone rolls their eyes in this country. But in America, I guess no one knew who she is. But Nanette Newman's character, Carol Van Sant. I mean, you see the downfall of it because he had the car accident, and then she goes, "Oh, I just hit my head. Oh, I'm so sorry about the whole accident thing." And then she goes, "Yeah, I just die if I don't get this recipe." I just died.
If I don't do this
recipe. And then you do. I mean,
I must look a mess. I must look a mess.
And I think that, I think out of all the characters, you kind of see like she's like the downfall of what can happen to the Stepford Wives, like what can malfunction within one. And then it's quite well constructed because you have that, and then you have, and but when you see things on their own, they don't make, they just seem a bit odd, but you're not quite able to place it. But as the story goes on, everything starts coming together. And I thought it was Bobby,
like the women's group, like when they sit down with all the women and they're asking them questions, there's nothing that's really odd from what they say. Like, oh, I'm just so busy, I'm cleaning the house, or, oh, I can't, like the one who's in the garden and she's clipping, and they're like, but don't you go out? Oh, silly, of course I go. I'm out right now. And it's like, it's not, you don't like think of anything of it,
Well, John, if you want to save time, the best thing to do is start easy on starch. It saves so much time.
Oh, God.
If they ever ask me to do the ad, I will do it for free. and that's another odd thing as well, because when obviously this town must have product placement in it, because when the Stepford Wives, they will go on and on about a product or an ad sort of thing. But there are things that they can't get in town that they hide away from. Like when Bobby comes into Joanna's house for the first time, she goes, oh my God, it's high C.
Yeah.
And she goes, when I poured this across from the border, I got ring-a-dings sort of thing.
Yeah, ring-a-dings. Yeah, have you ever had a ring-a-ding? Oh my God, yeah.
In my purse, I have ring-a-dings and tampons. I don't know what that says about me, but... But so obviously there's some certain foods that they can't get in Stepford that they like banned.
Well, I mean, it's sugary, it's fattening, but then I'm like, if it's a robot, does a robot get fat? Like, so why do you give a shit? Like
I guess maybe because you're feeding your children, aren't they children's foods? High C.
That's true. Yeah.
So I did pick that up this time around. I was like, oh my God, actually. And then, but when they do mention like any kind of product that they're cleaning with, they mention the product. It's like they're reading an ad, which is kind of weird.
But that's smart, because that's like early product placement. Because usually it's like, oh, look, I'm cleaning. And they put the box of Tide right in the front of the camera, like basically like, and Tides are.
Well, Get Out does it as well, unfortunately, when we get to that.
Oh, with the phone.
Windows products are everywhere. Yeah. But I think it's part of their aesthetic, because you actually get it in the book as well. Whenever one of the Stepford Wives' character is almost like, when they're mentioning the character, it's almost like, they're pushing the brand that they're pushing. It's like, I think there's one character in the book that goes, she goes, oh, they asked her to join the women's club, and it's not in the movie, but they asked her to join the women's club. She goes, I'm sorry, but I have to go mop my floors with shiny glow. It's a made up brand in the book.
Yeah.
And I have to shine my floors with shiny glow mopping. It does save time. My floors look so glorious. Look how shiny they are. They are so glossy. And it's like, and Joanne's like, okay, and they kind of that way.
But it's also, if you think about it, like as they're recording her voice and they're recording everything she said, they have to figure out dialogue, right? So where do these guys pull the dialogue? They pull it from adverse, right? Like, because you're pulling these ads of women who are like, supposed to be the perfect woman, right? So you're cleaning your floors, or you're getting, that special look, and they probably took the advertising and was like, yeah, what do you want your wife to say aside from you're a master, you're a king, like let's have them say, wow, the floors have never looked so clean, and it's those advertising that they probably pulled from. It's like, well, just give them that dialogue. They don't need anything else. Like, that's it.
Well, I have to sit there and say that obviously that word, because that the stuttering guy gives Joanna the stammering guy, depending on.
Yeah. Stuttering.
I'm sorry, I don't really know what the PC term is for that nowadays. So, but he gives her this list of words, and apparently it's like quite a thick book of like just saying these words. And it does come up that anarchy is not in there, because isn't that one of the words that Paula knew the word? Bobby knew.
Bobby, yeah.
Knew the
because Bobby mentions it to one of the other because she says it and she's like, anarchy, what's that? and then Bobby's like, well, it means da 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 da,
And then when Joanne mentions it to her after she changes over, she doesn't know what it means. And that's when Joanne starts putting it more and more together, sort of thing. Which I have to sit there and say, Joanna is a very smart woman, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I do think, overall, I think the film is really quite a mastermind to look at the women's liberation movement that was going on at the time, and actually putting its point across. And I think it does it. I think it does it very well. It's not really in your face that much.
Yeah.
It's there. It's subtly done. And I think that if you're going to do a horror film or any kind of film and you're going to, you want to signal people in on the film. I think if you can do it, so therefore it's there, but it's not being thrown at your face.
Yeah.
At 100 miles per hour and like knives going at you. And I think this film does that very, very well. Virtual signaling. This film does virtual signal. It's all about, and it's very pro. In an odd way, it is a very pro woman film because it's saying that this is bad. You don't want women like this. You want them to be more like Joanna and Bobby and things like this. And and I thought they handled that very well. And they're also showing that, for a book that's written by a man, for a screenplay written by a man, and a film that's directed by a man, they did do a very, very good job because this would be something that you would think that this kind of message would come across from a woman director by a woman writer and by a woman writer and a woman producer. But this is all men that came out with this. And I think they do a fantastic job of like going, this is not what you want. You want Joanna and Bobby the way they are at the beginning of the film. You do not want the end product because this is not
correct. Yeah.
And I think
that's what I mean is that's where it kind of plays off of, again, Joanne wasn't a mean person. She wasn't like, I'm tired of you trying to change me. And, like she wasn't a like extreme feminist. She was actually just a woman, wanting to be herself. And like her biggest fear was that, as she talks to the therapist is like, I'm afraid I'm going to not be me. Like it's, she's not even really, I think, concerned with the process of what's happening because she thinks, there's something off, but she's concerned that I'm not going to be who I am anymore and they're going to take that away from me. It's oddly enough, there were feminist groups that were really upset with this film and saying, it took a page out of the feminist mystique and it was actually just a ripoff, and that, that the story itself, doesn't represent feminism. And I would disagree. I think that they didn't take the characters of Bobby and Joanne and make them ultra feminists and then made it a reason why these people wanted to turn them. Is actually the opposite. They made them real women of the time who were progressive and being who they were, and the fear of losing that and the fear of like, someone changing them. I think maybe they might have hated it too because of the ending, the way it ends, it doesn't leave you on a happy note. It's like, they do. They end up succumbing to that and they end up failing that mission to be who they are.
I do think, I think as Bryan Forbes sit there and said, if when the feminist one said, because it's not an anti-feminist movement, it's not an anti-woman movie, it's an anti-men movement. If you look at the men, the men are hideous in it. There's not one single man that you like in the film.
Yeah,
there even like the husband, even though, there is this passive aggressiveness to him, and you kind of go in like the benefit of the doubt, but he's still, the first thing he says when we meet her is like, "Oh, couldn't you, I can't believe you missed something in the house." Because she went back, she came down with the dogs, hands them down, and he has a go at her about, leaving something behind in the flat that he had to sort out, sort of thing. So he does, so you do get this kind of passive aggressiveness to him, though he is a bit nicer, than what you expect. So as you said before, it's kind of hard to figure out why he would want to go to this extreme.
Mm-hmm.
But then, but then we don't really get what their life is like in New York City. Maybe she's out with the girlfriends, and maybe Maybe she's one of those ladies who lunch, like Elaine Stritch and company. Here's to the ladies who lunch. And,
But maybe, a margarita at 12, a martini at 12, who cares?
Does anyone wear a hat? In Stepford, they do.
Apparently, everyone in Stepford fucking wears a hat. By the end of it, you're like, Jesus, like they all.
God, if you're a hat maker, go to Stepford. As long as it's a sun hat, whatever they're called. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the thing is, so you don't really know what transpired before that, and maybe that's part of the slight downfall of the film, sort of thing. Though I think it does Joanna fantastically well as being this independent, strong woman who has children. Her kids are pretty well. To be honest, her kids are pretty well behaved. The only time they're not behaved is when they're playing with the neighborhood kids. But when our kids well behaved, when they got a bunch of other kids together, they become a tribe and then run around loosely. But I mean, she seems to be a good mother. She's understandable, and she doesn't, from the sound of it, even when she does argue with her husband, because her husband's done really stupid stuff without consulting her, and that, and then she'll say it, but she's not yelling at him or saying anything. She just gets like, she doesn't even raise her voice that much.
No.
So, I think that maybe they could have shown. Maybe, but then again, the film's 2 hours long, so I don't know where you would fit this in. You don't really want to have flashback dream sequences because you get lost in the story. But maybe have a bit more of him being a bit more,
or even like discourse. Her. I would also say her relinquishing her life in the city, like. I get, because I was a product of that as well. You move wherever your spouse needs to because of their job. And maybe, it's a job that moved them to Connecticut. But it's, to me, she just kind of relinquished that life where she seemed to be happy. And now she's like, okay, I'll give this a try. But, had it been her just like, you made me move here. And it's almost like you don't do it intentionally, but when you move and you don't want to go somewhere and you're kind of forced into a situation, you become aggressive with it. And every little thing kind of sets you off. The kids set you off. The husband sets you off. Mm-hmm. The people that you're trying to be around who are you think are just, they're just fake. I don't want to be around them. And then you meet someone like Bobby, then you're like, oh, you're like me. Oh my God, let's talk about this. Mm-hmm. It never ever takes that approach. So I felt bad for her because I'm like she never really fought for herself in that way. Like there's a point to where, even the creepy guy, Dale, and he's telling her what's going on. You would think she'd just be like, she had something in her hand. Like she either had a golf club or she had something. And I was like, fucking hit him. Like, just hit him. Yeah. Like, you don't do anything. You're just like frozen. So I kind of was like, it annoyed me because I'm like, so you're fighting back before, you're fighting even with your husband. You're fighting to try to, you're trying to get your friend to wake up out of this thing and you realize it's not your friend. She's fighting. And then she gets there with no plan and you just stop fighting.
Yeah. What
the hell? Like, what happened?
I don't know if that's like late 60s, early 70s, because the female fighting back doesn't really happen until, I think, Halloween, really. That's when we first started seeing someone actually fight back, with Jamie Laurie Strode fighting back. And then, of course, after that, horror films, you always had the final girl fighting back.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have to agree with you. You're kind of like, and then she's running from door to door. She never runs down the stairs. She's still staying upstairs.
Yeah.
So you're thinking, well,
no, I think she gets locked out though because he locks the door. Like he pushes some button and it locks up or whatever.
Yeah, but I'm not quite
so
sure
she couldn't go down.
I'm not sure where that door is locking though, because there's plenty of other rooms that she's running to. So she's like running down this corridor and trying all these doors until she gets to her mocked up bedroom. So yeah, I wasn't quite sure where that door was because I thought because he didn't lock her into the room that they were in.
No, he just I think he locked her out. Like point, and then he let her go because he knew that any of the rooms, what she was probably trying to do is get her kid. So every room she popped in, nope, not here, nope, not here. And then she got to that one room and she's like, what the hell? Like, what just happened? I should also mention too, that the movie, there was no sets that were built. I mean, aside from that, I guess that room that they put that fake room in, but this film was all on location. So I thought that's very interesting for any type of film like this to not create facade. It's all real buildings. So,
well, I mean, this town of Stepford is based on a real town. That's where Ira Levin grew up, apparently.
Yeah.
And it's called Wilton, Connecticut, where he lived in the 1960s. Wilton is a step from Stamford, a major city lying 15 miles away. So,
yeah.
I mean, I think, you did, but then again, in this time frame, you do have a lot of families moving out of the city, moving into the suburbs. During the 60s and 70s, this is what you did, and then you would commute to work. It became a big thing at that time to commute into the city, and then you go back out to your house. And then if you were rich enough, you would have like a flat in the city just for the husband, so you could work and stay in the city if you needed to, and then come home on weekends. But yeah, I mean, what you're saying about the lack of fight goes, it's kind of annoying. I have to sit there and say that I think that, if you get a chance to see Revenge of the Stepford Wives, which is out on YouTube, and you can watch it for free, because I watch it. It's an interesting film. I quite enjoyed it. I remember watching it when I was growing up and liking it. And watching it this time, it does deal with some of these problems. There are Sharon Glass is a single woman in Stepford writing an article about Stepford, and so she has fight, sort of thing. And then you do get this bit of more of a fight sort of thing. But yeah, there is no fight. And I don't know if that, but there wasn't that much fight in the novel either. And I do think that maybe this is what the female trope is. I think that if she did fight and there was a struggle to the death at the end, maybe it would have been a bit more fulfilling an ending. I do like the downbeat ending, but I do kind of wish that, you just think she kind of accepted it. She's running through, fighting everything, fighting, and it's like, oh, okay, well.
But did you ever think like the ending when she's coming down the aisle, and for a split second, I thought it was actually her. And it was just her now, like maybe she did defeat the robot and was like, I'm just giving in. Because there's a part of it that she doesn't look like the Stepford Wife. She kind of looks sad in the eyes, right? She looks a little like dead. And to me, I'm like, at the moment when you see her, I thought, oh God. And then I was like, wait, that's still her, or it looks like her in this sense, like her, she just looks like broken. And she's just like, okay, I'm going to go about doing this now, So part of me wondered if that's like the twist would have been, maybe she did kill the robot, and maybe the robot broke her, and she's just, and it's like, we're going to keep trying to turn you. And she just is like, I give up. I'm going to do this.
Well, I think what they would have done, they would have killed her and he would have become a widower. I don't think they can risk her running around free.
Yeah.
I mean, what she can do is she can leave town, and basically next thing you know is Stepford is going to be like, one of the biggest media circuses around once that story got out.
True.
And
but not if they keep her kids.
Well,
that could be like, again, the scenario, she kills a robot. They say, well, okay, well, you need to do this, and you'll never see your kids again. Your kids, we have your kids, and she could be at the mercy of, okay, I have to do this,
But even if she divorced, I mean, at this time period, is that the kids would have gone to her. It's very rare that the kids would have gone to the father. Kids always went with their mother at the time. So even if she divorced.
No, but I'm saying, remember, they had her kids. They physically had her kids. Like, literally, they could have said, you're never going to see your kids again. So great, you fought back and you won. However, we tell you to do from now on.
Yeah, I just think that, I think they turned her, because rewatching the film this time around, and when they do that close up of her eyes, though they may be sad, they're dead. And then, and I always kind of remember that image. So when I watched the film this time, whenever you see the Stepford Wives' eyes, they have dead eyes. So when you rewatch it, because there's no expression in their eyes. Well, their eyes are just dead. It's like the smile doesn't go to their eyes.
Yeah, the smile goes here. Yeah, but there's no. It's like
And, like when you see Nanette Newman.
Apparently Tyra Banks wasn't in town because she could totally teach him how to smize.
But I mean, when you see Nanette Newman and she brings over the casserole dish and she gives it the first time she gives it, if you look at her face, the thing is, her eyes are smiling. I mean, her face is smiling, but her eyes aren't.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like sort of thing. And I do think they turned her, sort of thing. Cause it just makes more sense, I guess, because
it's just sad. I was like, I kind of like, and it's like, I know you can't have every movie has a happy ending, but it's just sad because had she done something like, had she been just stupid, like had she been like, I always tell this to my friends, like the endings where the person ends up doesn't winning, it's often because they're just dumb. Like they just do really dumb things and do a lot of stupid things. And you're like, well, don't go in that. Oh, yep. They went in the room. Well, don't put down the knife. Oh, yep. They put down the knife, like, and it's like all these little things. And then the person gets killed. I'm like, oh, they kind of got what they deserved. Oh, well, like, this is just like, oh, it's kind of sad,
Yeah, it is kind of sad. And I guess, on a good note is that it shows that she is a really good mother, that she doesn't want her children in this situation. So I guess she died basically protecting her children, really.
Yeah.
But now
I just wish she would have went in with a plan. She could have had Robo Bobby. She could have reprogrammed.
Well, yeah. As you were saying before, there is a bit of a come down slightly because she does fight against her husband. She's very smart. She puts everything together. She's the only person that puts things together because no one else in that town puts things together. I don't even know. I don't know what happened when they were first turning the women at the very beginning, but if any of them put anything together, because you don't really know the history here about when they started their plan, and now we're like at the end of their plan sort of thing. So now it's just as people come through, it takes 4 months.
Yeah.
But we're, when you had the full town there and you had all these women in part of this women's club and they're changing them, you don't know what happened during this period of time sort of thing. Now, we're at the end, we're a well-oiled machine, isn't it? It's a well-packaged.
Yeah. Well, and yet there's still people coming because how it ends where you also see that couple, the first black couple that you see that are bickering in the aisle in the supermarket. So you see, oh, well, here's another Joanne, like ready for the change into the prime,
Well, there's one subplot that's in the book that's not in the film, and it's the old lady who's the reporter. She comes over.
Who's in it? Yeah, wasn't she the one that was wanted to do an article in the newspaper or something, or the etiquette or whatever?
Yeah, she goes to each new person and does an article for the newspaper, and they see her and they goes, "Oh, they were part of a women's club," and she's not a Stepford wife.
Oh, interesting.
Because she's too old to change.
Oh, but then does she know what's going on? Is she aware of what's going on? If she's not, she's a horrible reporter. I'm just saying, like you're supposed to see the, follow the trail. Come on.
I think I can't read. I have to go back and reread the book, but I think that something happens to her. And that sort of thing because I think Joanna goes and questions her a bit more. And then something happens. She just disappears. Then we don't know what
they
happened.
removed her from the equation, basically.
Yeah, sort of thing, because she's got loose lips, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, but Isaac was saying that an interesting thing about this film is that, and the thing is, I guess where you can see what happens in this film actually does happen today. The simple fact that when men get rich and wealthy, and they'll have this woman by their side supporting them until they get rich and wealthy. And then what they'll do is they'll divorce her and trade her in for a younger model.
Yeah, like a newer model, yeah.
But they end up sticking to someone that looks like the ex-wife, just a younger, newer version. Well, Donald Trump's been doing it for years.
True.
If you look at all Donald Trump's ex-wives, they look similar.
The blonde feature. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, blonde feature, cheekbones, body shape, everything. This is no disrespect for, I'm not trashing Donald Trump here because he's not the only one that's doing it. Look at Hollywood. Everyone in fucking Hollywood.
Everyone does it. Yeah.
And the more rich and powerful you are, the younger your wives get. And that is a female problem. So women, if you have a problem with that, it's not the men problem, it's the women's problem, because if these women are marrying these guys because they're going to have someone take care of them, you have a problem. You know what I mean?
Well, it's also, again, it's, you can call it out and call a spade and dump their
well,
dump somebody dump you.
This kind of, when we get into Get Out, I'll tell you what the girl said about Get Out, which is quite interesting as well. But yeah, and then what men do when they become rich and powerful, they trade in the woman that supported them all their lives for a younger model of them. and it happens all the time. And in Stepford Wives, that's pretty much what it's about. It's keeping women at that thing so you don't have to trade them in later, because all these men are rich and powerful men. But what happens is, the question I was getting back to what Isaac asked, Isaac said, what happens when these men die? What happens to their robots? Because these robots are never going.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, I'm assuming it's like a self-terminate type of situation, unless the end game isn't really getting the best wife, but rather building a community of rich men. So like the kids and the girls are taught at a very young age to be doting wives, right? And the boys are taught to be elite. You're gonna graduate. You're gonna go to the men's club, and the men's club is, and unless the end game for the Stepford Wives situation is building a new world community where it's like the men are the rich ones, and so when the men die, they pass their legacy down to their children. But the question is, the children have to be so bred to be that way, because when they all die and then the moms who are robots, they self-terminate, who's going to keep teaching them to be that way?
And when grandma ends up being younger than the daughter, looking at her, because you're going to have that situation. Another thing is that Stepford, though it does, these people are going out of town. They're commuting out of town to work and stuff like this. Because, Joanna's husband is going out of town. He's still going to New York to work. So, obviously, Stepford can't, be able to supply them their life. They still have to go out and work, sort of thing, to have this lifestyle. And so, obviously, they must not have a university. So, these girls and boys are going to have to go out into the world to get a university, whether they go to Harvard or community college or wherever they're going to go to school, or a state college. They're going to have to run into the real world, and they don't have their own network on television. So that, the modern world is going to be filtering in. So I'm wondering how you would be
interesting if the husbands actually go out of the community to get other recruits. So like, the husband going into the city, it'd be interesting to see, he goes there and he's like, oh, we have this great community and you would be great members of our community, right? And his whole job is like scout basically and bring people back. It's like, so the promise that maybe he was given is, you can leave the job you have, you're working your butt off and your wife doesn't even appreciate it. Come here, you can be in this community, but you just have to go out and bring other people back to the community and help build the community,
Well, in Revenge of the Stepford Wives, they actually attack that issue a little bit. And what they say in here is that the reason why Sharon Gless's character has gone to Stepford, and this is 10 years after the events of this movie, and the reason why she's there is because Stepford, the world's gone through this economic slump, but Stepford doesn't. And the house prices are very, very high, and they've never actually dropped below a certain level. And in order to live there, you have to go. It has to be done by committee to live there. And what you have, Julie Kavanaugh's husband, who's Don Johnson, he's the local cop, and the cops there make more money than anywhere else in the country. And they get this huge house and for their wife, sort of thing, and their family. It's like this huge house. And there's never a house for sale in Stepford.
Wow.
So that means you can't just move into this community. That's they're saying, oh, this looks like a nice community. Oh, I'd like to live here one day. It's almost like you have to be invited to live there.
But see, I would think that's an evolution to what was founded, right? So if this is 10 years after that, how, like, for instance, how did the husband know where to go? Someone had to tell him, hey, Joe, you got to come here, whether it's a fellow colleague or like someone had to be a recruiter to bring him into this trusted environment. Like,
I would say that what he was, because he was a corporate lawyer, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And I would assume that him being a corporate lawyer, he's making really good money. Because to be honest, in New York City, they're only living around the corner from not Times Square, but Central Park.
Yeah,
they're living around the corner for Central Park. And
so they're well to do.
So they got money before they moved there.
Yeah.
So obviously he's successful at what he does. So I'm assuming that maybe he was one of the corporate lawyers for one of those computer companies that were all over the place or something, because as I said before, when he moves in, he knows somebody, he knows the next neighbor because what he says to him, there's some kind of connect there.
I thought it was the guy said to him, does your wife look as good as she cooks?
No,
it was the other way around. I thought he said it like basically because he looked at it, the neighbor who is the one who has a Stepford wife looked at her and was like, oh, does she look as good as she cooks?
No, it was Joanna's husband that said it to the neighbor because he saw the wife, because the wife brings over the casserole and gives it to him. And then he goes, oh, that casserole was fantastic. It tasted really good to the wife later. And it was him talking to him. So obviously they know each other. And the men's club, he got involved in the men's club very quickly.
Yeah.
Like within
and kind of like she said, you're doing all this, like, so just join because you already have sort of made a decision. You're going to do it anyway. So why tell me? Yeah.
I mean, and when you move into a community, you don't get involved in the community that fast.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It takes time to meet people and get to know people, but obviously because he went to, that's why I'm assuming that it has to be like an invite only. It has to be, that's the way it has to work. You can't just
come into town. Yeah.
You can't just come in town and just buy a house because, I'd say things, I mean, it happens in 4 months. This whole movie happens in 4 months.
Oh yeah. Because you think about the time period. Yeah. Yeah.
It happens, I mean, it's in 4 months or time sort of things. And, and obviously, because of the sequel as well, saying that, no houses are ever available sort of thing. And you're like, but then
I would also say too, like to go on your point with him knowing the neighbor, who in the hell has a casserole already pre-baked? Like the wife had to know they were coming.
Yeah. And
like,
I think
here's a casserole that I just happened to have in my oven. What?
I mean, it'd be like me meeting you and you're with your partner and I go, oh, does he cook as good as he looks? And I don't know you. You'd be like, hey, what the fuck are you? I don't know you. Now, if you're a really good friend and someone says that to you, you'd be like, ha, 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 funny. If you're
the neighbors are creepy. Time to move.
Precisely. You'd be like, oh, you fucking pervert. Get the fuck away from me.
I know.
Don't you ever, you're not passing and going. You're not collecting your $200 fucking dollars in your store. But yeah.
Speaking of a flirtatious moment, did you pick up on when Joanne goes to talk to her therapist? There was like this lesbian moment there. Was it just me? Because it's like she's opening up to this therapist. It's not, I think, a familiar therapist. It's someone fairly new. And she's
very new. First time.
Yeah.
First visit.
And opening up. And then it's almost as if the therapist is like, come to my house. Come lay in my bed. But it's more like, I have you. I'll save you. But there's this like moment where it's like, what's going on? Why are they looking at each other like that?
Well, I mean, I think this therapist probably went to the same school as Betty Buckley's did in Lit. It's kind of like, the first session, and normally the first session in psychiatry, when you go to a psychiatry lesson or psychiatry session, is that, it's an introductory into psychiatry, and you kind of discuss things. You don't really go into too much depth about anything. And of course she goes into a lot of depth, but I'm not quite sure what if a patient came to me per se and said that sort of thing, I'd be like, well, you can do this and this and this and this. I'm not quite sure. It's like, here's my private number. You can call me anytime and you're right there for me. Just go now, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Or first she offers her drugs. She's like, here, just take this drug. You'll be fine. You have a nice little nap. And she's like, no, they're going to take me. No, wouldn't you like go, hold on, I'll be right back. And you step out of the room and you're like, 911. We have a situation here. Like,
well, to be honest, if a patient came to me with the story that Joanna came to, I would sit there and think, okay, she's having a psychotic break. Because if you listen to what she's saying, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I mean, it's one of those situations that it's a horrific sense because, we watched it as viewers and we've seen it. But if someone, let's sit there and say this is really happening and someone tells you this story.
Yeah.
Like,
you're being replaced by a robot. Like, I don't even remember what she says, but it's not as if, women are being kidnapped. I don't know where they're going. And, I feel like that's going to happen to me. Yeah. Then that would raise a flag. But when you go slightly fictional, or you seem fictionalized, and it's like, yeah, you're probably losing your mind. You're crazy,
Well, it's a simple fact is that, like, her big complaint is that women are enjoying taking care of their house and taking care of their children. And that's the way it sounds.
Yeah.
And there is a sinisterness going on, as because we're seeing it through Joanna's eyes, and yes, it's very, very sinister. But to explain it to the outside world, and they say this is, let's put this in realism terms, and someone tells you, it's like, these women are moving there, and they're cleaning all the time, and they're baking all the time, and they're just not the people I think they should be. You'd be like, well, first of all, if they're enjoying it and they're happy and they're not hurting you, what in the hell are you getting involved in here for?
Yeah.
And then my thing is like, and then she goes, I feel like I have to be one of them. So obviously you feel like you need to be one of them because you feel like you need to belong, but you don't really need to be one of them. This is your problem. And that's how a psychiatrist would look at it. Or I think that's how a normal person would look at it. And I'm not sure, jump on the bandwagon and go, you need to get out there really quick. We're really going to just go, sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, unless she thought it was like, unless she felt there was abuse going on, which I don't remember if she said anything that led to, because you would never also as a therapist, I'm sure you wouldn't say to someone who's in a battered home, like, hey, just hold out, like you're going to say, you would normally say it's like a neutral party. Here's a number for a shelter. This is where you're going to go, and you're going to take your kids and go here to the shelter. Yeah. Not, hey, come on over to my house. What?
Well, I think what you would do is go, okay. I mean, I don't think you would diagnose her right away. I mean, maybe in the notes, and once they got typed up, you might allude to certain things that you might think be like the psychotic break of her sort of thing, or where this may be leading, whether it's like, emotionally insecurity or something like this. Because from there, the next session would be like, let's look back at their family and where they come from and how they got to this point. Mm-hmm. And, if you think of your first session is, if let's say you have 60-minute first session, first 20 minutes of that session basically is you filling out paperwork. And it's the 40 minutes like getting to know you.
I would think you would never dive in that deep with someone, like you would just be like, it's exploratory, right? You're just trying to evaluate what the person's psychosis is, not like, oh yeah, she's telling me now a story about a town that's trying to take over her life. Like what? Like the hell?
I mean, I think would have made that scene a bit more if it was an old girlfriend in New York City, because she must have had girlfriends where she was coming from, and she
went back to New York City, like she went just to go to New York City to go and
have coffee with friends or something.
Yeah, or meet with her former therapist. Like me, it's like what who I am, and I'm of sound mind, so I'm not lying. I'm not crazy.
Yeah, and I think that probably would have made that scene work a bit more. But yeah, it was a bit like, huh? I mean, it played very, very good in the movie. And if you don't, and this is one of those plot holes. Stepford Wives has some plot holes that don't. I mean, Get Out has the same kind of plot holes as well. And I think that when you have a story that's centered around the way that's the story, I think there's no way that you're going to cover up some of these things, sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I do think, because you do. I mean, I it's exactly that. I was like going, well, I mean, you don't know this woman, and you're like pretty much quick on the mark thinking that everything she's telling you is true. Because as I said before, when you hear what she's saying, it doesn't sound that bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bit.
It sounds like a psychosis thing, like where you're telling someone, about, oh my God, but you don't understand. They're all strange. They clean and they bake and then she's like, okay, and like, what else? Like, she's probably like, what, do they kill people? What's going on? Like, and then, it's like, but I don't want to become them. And it's like, okay, but you're a city woman who moved to a suburb. That's a normal fear, right? And you would usually like, she's just afraid of that change,
Well, it's a bit like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I mean, just the story is basically the same framework as Invasion of the Body Snatchers, really. And if you go to someone going, oh, they're taking over people's bodies. Well, what they doing? Well, they're just walking around, just being slightly different than what they were before. Like,
you could have also, I think it would have been a better approach too, is like, you know how, who was the one who said to her, oh, we have a therapist for you. And she's like, no, I'll find my own. And yeah. And so it would have been interesting if that therapist was still under them and the therapist would have been talking to her. And then she would have been like, but what's wrong, Joanna? Why wouldn't you want a clean house? Like, and she'd be like, oh shit, she's one too. Like, you know, like it would have been interesting if,
well, kind of like
been like backing out the door slowly. Okay, you know, I don't want them to know that I know type of situation. That I think that would have been interesting for them to.
Well, like a Rosemary's Baby scenario where Rosemary goes to her former gynecologist and starts discussing this and goes, "Okay, you just lay down," and she wakes up and the husband and everyone's there. That
exactly. Like they're in on it. Yeah,
you know, I'm very trusting. And it's like poof. Sort of thing. Because
I feel like you wouldn't have even needed the battle with the husband and all. Like, I feel like it would have been interesting if she goes back out and then that's when they kind of get her. And then now she's like, where the hell am I? You know, like type of situation.
Well, I don't know where her psychiatrist was because she left the psychiatrist when it was sunny, but she didn't get back to Stepford until it was dark and rainy. So I mean, I don't know how many miles away this person was, but it was a good fair distance. So she went a long way to get to that psychiatrist. Yeah, it wasn't local.
Again, I feel like she just had everything so planned out, even like to go to Bobby to see if Bobby would help her and stuff. You have all this stuff planned out, and then you're like, you know, where are they? She attacks the husband. Where are they? And he's like, oh, they're at the men's whatever. And she goes there. It's just, there's just like no plan. I'm like, so girl, what are you going to do? Like you have literally like, what are you going to do? Like, wouldn't you call for the police or wouldn't, you know, like something to be like, hey, I need help. Like, I don't know. And again, I guess it's one of those during that time period, they kind of did that intentional. There's an intentional reason why they did that. But I think nowadays that would never fly. Well, they'd be like, girl, you're stupid. I'd be like, you're dumb.
But even the men's club, I mean, sort of thing is that, you know, even, you know, you got Bobby, you got Charmaine, and you got Joanne. And their husbands are at the men's club every single night of the week, and obviously on weekends, and they're never home because they're at the men's club, and they're okay with it. It's like, just to prove it, but not one of them ever raises questions like, "What in the hell are you doing there every single day? Don't you know you have children? You got us here at home." And it would have been nice to have a little bit of a, you know, if she said that to him, you know, because we don't really see Charmaine and Bobby with their husbands on a, you know, side by side together, sort of thing. But even if you had Joanna sitting there goes, I know you're at the men's club all the time, you know, you got children here, there's me here, you know, you got us. And if you just had something that was said there, I mean, Charmaine.
I feel like she does. Doesn't she call him out on it though? I think Joanne, she does.
Really, it's only the only time the men's club is that they said that when he's going to join, it's like, well, you've already made your decision then, so I don't know why you bother asking me.
No, but I thought there was a time after when something happened, and she's like, "Well, you're always going to that club, and I don't, you know."
Well, when all the men came around, and then she has this argument with them. It's like, "What are you doing? These men are really boring. You wouldn't even hang."
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah,
sort of thing. But it's not like you've been spending all your time there. It's like, why are you hanging around these people? They're boring. Now that she's met them, she realizes that they're not the cream of society. They're not fun.
She's like, "Why are you hanging out with stuttering Stan over there?"
Stuttering Stan, and you know,
Stuttering Stanley,
and the sketch artist.
Which again is so fucking creepy. Who sits there and is like, you know, you're having this discussion, you're really not even having a discussion. You're just sitting here listening to these men meander, and like she's sitting there so bored out of her mind, and then he's just like, "Hey, look what I did." I'll be like, "Okay, creep." Okay, creepy.
Well, you know, the funny thing about it is that whenever I watched this film in the past, I always thought, why didn't they get a photographer and go, we'll give you a photo session. You know, we'll do a model photo session for you. You know what I mean? And then watching it this time, I understand why they do that now. Because if she's looking bored and listless, and her face is going to be more and more relaxed because it's not like,
so they're trying to get like a natural look on her face, not a you know, smile. Yeah.
And that when I thought about it, that actually made sense. Actually, it was Isaac that pointed it out to me. I go, I don't understand why they just don't photograph them. I don't know why he's got to sketch them. And the more bored she gets, the better realism you're going to get of the face. It was what Isaac was saying.
Yeah.
The more bored she is, the more realism you get. Okay,
Yeah.
so what? I go, so when I'm with you every day of my life, I'm more real.
Yeah. Well, and that's see, then wouldn't that be breaking the point basically that you're constantly just getting you wake up and your wife, who is, you're supposed to be your perfect wife, is like like she just looks bored out of her mind. Like, wouldn't you want her to be a little bit like, oh, let me always be happy, let's smile all the time,
I guess it's probably easier to get emotions from a resting bitch face than it would be from someone, from like someone who's smiling all the time. Otherwise, you get that Janet Jackson with a butcher's knife look, kind of like psychotic.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, overall, I mean, my thoughts on this film, I really do like this film. I think it's up there with one of the greatest horror films. I think it's up there with Rosemary's Baby. I think it's up there with a lot of those classic 1960s, 1970s horror films. And I think it still works today. It's still very, very, I think it's still very, very effective. And I have to sit there and say that my mind, whenever I watch this film, it doesn't wander. I'm always watching it. I can't stop watching it.
I agree. Yeah. And it's one of those, like, I appreciate the slow churning effect of how things are happening. It's not up in your face. Because, I feel like if you immediately put like a scene where all these women are very different, it would make any person run from that town. So as you're watching Joanna adjust to the town, you're kind of adjusting to the town as well. And there are these slow steeping moments that come in, and she's just like, wait, something's not right. And so, like, I appreciate that it takes its time and then it gets there. And one of my favorite scenes is a scene when she confronts Bobby, and then Bobby just basically short circuits. She's such a great actress because
we were friends.
I thought we were friends. I thought we were friends. I would never.
How would you like your coffee? I thought we were friends. How would you like your coffee? I thought we were friends.
And the movements, like, it says a lot that, it's one thing you have the camera angles, but the movements, which we'll get into with Get Out, I think part of the success of that too is how the director lets the actor do what they do, and like how they move is very important in this film because it all is dependent on that fakeness, right? You're not who you are and you're not real. And more that sort of in the beginning you don't see it as much because maybe I also have this theory that maybe most of the women weren't transformed yet. So throughout the 4 month, how many women were, because I think she mentions time, right? Doesn't she say, but then she wasn't like this after this time, and that was 2 weeks ago or whatever. So maybe it's like a process. Like, we just got one off the line, Joe. Like, put her out there in the field. Now we're waiting for Molly. Now Molly's. So by the end of it, now you clearly see how all these women have been transformed, coming down the aisles and, hello, Susan. Oh, hi, Joanna. And it's like they go to the next one. It's so creepy.
I also think I also noticed with their body movements is that their body movements are very exact as well. It's like they're very, very, their shoulders are back. They're very, very straight, and with Stepford Wives. And when they ever reach for anything, it's very, very deliberate.
With the full extension of the hand and the reach, and
And I thought that was very, very clever. And the thing is, I also think that's because you do get the foreshadowing. Oh, we got a black family moving in. Well, they call them Negro family because that's what they were called in the day.
Back then, yes.
Then. And because I think that's a good thing, don't you? And Joanna doesn't really say anything, sort of things like small town stupidness. But but then what's funny is that when you do go to the supermarket and you do see them there, and they're like, and you have all these Stepford Wives, and everything's over exaggerated in the way that they're walking and everything like this, and
they're putting items in their cart,
Yeah, everything's very deliberate, and then you get the real couple.
Yeah,
and it's like, and you kind of
stand out like a thumb, like you just see them, you're like, oh.
Yeah. I mean, you do get a little bit of that when Joanna goes to the supermarket before, Nanette Newman has her car accident, but you don't really get a lot of. You don't really get a lot of that. You kind of get, the kids running around and she's, grabbing ice cream or whatever like this. Oh, can you pay for this sort of thing? But you don't really get the whole supermarket scene, which really plays that well. It would be quite nice, I think, if we had a scene where she's trying to get her groceries and everyone's walking around the grocery store.
Yeah. Well, but that's the point. I think it kind of shows you the contrasting difference of when she first gets there. There's not too much going on. Because I would say even, I forget who the other one is, because I know Charmaine hasn't been transformed. who was the other one? Because there's another one that was their friend, and I feel like she might have been, because she seemed very, poor, what was her name? Poor Carol, she was like, I feel so bad for her. But it wasn't like, I feel bad because she got in an accident. It was like, now she's going to have to go, clean. And now she's, got to change her outfit. And they're like, they both look at her like, what the hell?
I know.
And then it's like, I must look a mess. Oh, I must look a mess.
I sure hope she's okay.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to run into her. I hope she's okay. And it stays up on the loop. You're like, So basically, might explain the reason why when you do see the Stepford Wives having conversations, they only spend short time with each one.
Yeah, because it's not. I feel like again, you have to show you're cordial, right? So you come up and hello, Mary. Oh, hi, Susan. How are you? I'm fine. And that's it. You don't need to say anything else. Like nothing about the kids.
So obviously, as far as obviously they're not hooked. They're not hooked up to Amazon Echo. They don't have.
Yeah, exactly.
Yet.
Yeah. Well, again, that's what you were talking about earlier, how it's almost like impossible for it to take place now because the world is so different. It's like, it's not that small town living is like, it does exist. It still exists. But I think with technology, it also changes the aspect of it.
Well, I don't think you have the perfect, you really don't have, the
nuclear family.
Well, the nuclear family, but you also don't have this vision of what a perfect female is, or what a perfect male is, or a perfect anything is now, because everything's there's these blurry lines with everything now.
Yeah, correct.
I mean, you can't, and I think now that people are realizing, and these are people who are actually living in reality. I think everyone realizes that there's no such thing as the idyllic childhood, idyllic parents. I think we all realize that we're all human and our parents are human, and through right and wrong, we are what we are, sort of thing. And I think we're a lot more conscientious about that. And, our generation is like, I miss the 80s. Would I want to go back to the 80s? No. We don't have this, I think, the only thing I can sit there and say is I'm glad I grew up with the era and the age that I grew up with, because I think I had a lot more fun than if I was growing up today.
Yeah.
But do I want to go back to those days? No. Plus, new technology, I'm a lot lazier than I was back then. So that doesn't help. But you know what I mean? It's like, and I think that we don't really have, we're not really in a generation now where we're looking back. We're always looking forward. And when we do look back, we kind of have a skewed version of what the past is, sort of thing. Whether it's more realistic or the past is just evil, however we want to look at it. But I think in this time period, I think that they did romanticize the past. Our parents romanticized the past. Our grandparents
of course, yeah. Well, you're coming out of the Depression, right? So the Depression was the Depression, like the deepest, saddest moment, one of the deepest, saddest moments in history. So then to rebound from that to a everything is clean and pristine and not nice and new and fresh, and that's where I think you're kind of trying to paint over the really dankness of the time, the period.
Yeah, and I don't think that our generation has that. So it's probably another reason why you can never really have the idealistic. I mean, to be honest, we do kind of have a Stepford wife, not like the Stepford wife of the domestic or that domesticity that we have. Our Stepford wives is probably what we have with people who are massively addicted to plastic surgery.
True.
And that's probably what we have as our version of Stepford Wives. It's not so much of what you are inside as how you present yourself outside as far as what kind of face you're going to have.
Well, it's also, if you go into like social, I mean, you need the people who create social profiles for themselves. Like, are they being authentic? More than likely not, because you're trying to present yourself to the world as what you think the world needs you to be. And so you have a lot of people who are YouTube talenters, or you have a lot of people who are just social talenters that are they really who they are, or are they just presenting something to you to like kind of feed that need to be entertained?
Well, even like pictures, whether, you're looking at, dating sites or dating apps, or whether you're looking at Facebook, Instagram. I mean, how many of them are going through filters at the moment?
Yeah, yeah. Stretching now, apparently, you can alter your size. And like one of my friends was saying how one of his friends who is, overweight, she had posted a picture and he's like, wow, oh my God, she looked like she lost 40, 50 pounds. And then like a month later he sees her and he's like, what? Wait. And he's like, yeah, I'm not confused. And she goes, oh yeah, I just, I had my friend do a little Photoshop. She had her cinch in the neck and she, lifted my chin.
But I mean, so I guess we do have a Stepford Wives community still living.
Yeah, true.
Presenting just different, It's
yeah.
not so much about baking and keeping the house clean and satisfying your man. It's more like false
image
advertising. Yeah.
Yeah.
False advertising imaging.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'll just put it this way: if you were a company and you were false advertising, chances are you'd probably be sued. So
true.
Take that away from it. So what we're going to do is so we get started on Get Out. So Get Out is a 2017 American horror film that won the best original script at the Oscars last year. It also made tons load of money, and it was written by the comedian Jordan Peele. Jordan Peele is quite interesting because he's someone who's made a lot of money in comedy. So I think that when he came out with this film, I think it was from left field that he was able to go from comedy to horror.
Yeah.
Now, I think using horror, I think horror is kind of a stretch calling this a all-out horror movie, but
I'd say thriller is more thrilling than horror.
Yeah, I do say that. I mean, I think that maybe if you're black, it might be more of a horror film than if you're white, maybe. And I think it depends on what your backing thing is. But to me, it's more like a really dark thriller. But there are some satirical themes in it and stuff like this. And yeah, so John, what are your thoughts about the making of Get Out?
I'm actually, for him, I mean, this is his first film in this sort of genre. He won an Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay, and for him to also be nominated for Oscars, Golden Globes, Screen Actors Guild, and for this genre, it's unique because most of these films that are nominated are usually drama flicks, right? They're the ones that are the feel good or the surviving insurmountable odds. I guess in this way there was a survival of insurmountable odds. But I found it very interesting that, he kind of broke through that barrier and has sort of, set the precedence that we do need to pay attention to thrillers and horror movies because there are these really amazing stories that can be told. But it does, Get Out tackles some very strong themes around black and white cultures and racism and slavery and interracial tension and cultural norms, all, disillusion. The movie was met, with different counterpoints, so you had some who really, really loved the film and thought it was really different. And then you had other people who just thought it was a steaming pile of poop, and they just couldn't understand what they were trying to get to. I just love that the director's style too, because he definitely relied a lot on letting the actors do what they needed to do to kind of be the characters and have these moments where, I forget the actress who plays, what's her name?
Kathy Keener?
She's the one who plays the grandmother, basically. Her moment where she's just, you could see her frightened, she's happy, and then all of a sudden she just goes into this terrified look, please help me, and it goes back. Yeah, she just is amazing, and he lets the camera sit there, and he lets the actor do what they need to do. And so often directors want to move quickly and they want the actors to move along with the cameras. This director does a great job in letting the camera sit and letting the actor do the job that they're paid to do, Mm-hmm. So I really like that approach from him.
I think that I'm glad that he won the Oscar. I do think that him winning the Oscar for Best Original Screenplay, I think there's some virtual signaling on here, because if you remember the year before that, there is that big boycott about the Oscars. And I think mm-hmm. this is the way. But saying that, I don't know what else he was up against, to be honest with you. I know that he won, and I'm glad that he won. And I think that, it's good to have an intelligent horror film out there, and it'd be nice to get more intelligent horror films out there. So, and, I don't really understand this whole thing about black films and white films and stuff like this. I think, I'll watch a film if it's good. And on Shudder, to go away from it, Shudder's got this really interesting documentary called Horror Noir, and it's about black people in horror films. And they were saying because of Get Out, and because it's now won the Oscar for best original screenplay, and because it was one of the biggest box office smashes of the year, that there will be more movies for black directors and black writers and black actors and stuff like this. Yeah. And I think that is an excellent thing, but I would think that don't give money to just anybody. Make sure that they're going to deliver goods. Don't just throw money at things because they think this is what's going to make money and this is the new thing. Because that any time that they, it's a bit like slasher films. When Halloween makes lots of money, and then you got Friday the 13th, but then look at all the crap that came out that people were throwing money at that you don't even remember what they are. And I think that, if you're going to start using a lot of black directors, black actors, and black screenwriters, great. Just make sure that the films are good, because if the films are good, I'm going to go watch them. Correct. I'm not going to watch them because it's an African-American film. I'm not going to go watch them because it's, I don't go watch Woody Allen films because they're Jewish films. I'll go see them if I think they're good and hope to be, wild out. It's like, and I think if they can keep them, make sure that, throw money at these people, make sure that they're good films. Otherwise, you're going to get a bunch of films that are going to wash out the system. And sorry for the word washed out, but you're going to wash out a film system, and everyone's going to die a terrible death.
Yeah.
That's careful.
I mean, I think with this film, though, too, I think what he did was he called out some sort of, he called out cultural norms that have been in place for a while, and kind of literally blatantly calls out certain actions and reactions to things. Yeah. And it serves its purpose. So I think for him, I think he just did it as a way of kind of like calling it out and just letting it be. I think, for instance, the new film he's doing, Us, it's about a family. It's not about a black family. It's about a family in this situation. And I think he learned from, I want to be able to tell this family's point of view and story, and they just happen to be black, and this is their life, and this is their culture, right? And we're showing their culture. I think you learn from sort of those things when you sort of put it out there. And in this, it's very blatant about, people who, I'm not racist, but I voted for Obama. I would vote for Obama third time. Well, that's a saying that is kind of like, well, why would you say that? And it calls that out, because how many times people have, black people have heard people say that, and it's like, hey, we're just kind of telling you that's still kind of racist, whatever. But it's one of those things where I think he put this in there as a less from the standpoint of, trying to break the process to things and getting people to see that, but more from an angle of, he took a story, which he was very inspired by Stepford Wives, and said, well, what if this was a black-white issue? What if this was something that people were trying to conform, or, trying to create, or strip down someone and make them conform. And it's a different form of like slavery in a way. What if we do this and we put the spin on it? And I think bravo to him to be able to take a story like that and say, oh, let's put this spin on it and see what people think, And again, you get both sides. You get people who are like, holy crap, why would you ever make this movie? It was horrible. It makes white people look bad or whatever. And then you have another side. It's like, well, no, you point out some very poignant issues, like black people disappearing. 20 people, I don't know how many men that this woman like abducts. No one knows it. But then a white girl goes missing, and like 20 minutes later, she's on the news, and Cindy, she was 23, so it does call out some of those things, those issues. And it's, I find it interesting.
No, I found the film really interesting, which I'm really looking forward to getting involved with.
Yeah.
I mean, I really don't have a lot about the making of it. I mean,
I don't either.
There's a lot of, it was kind of straightforward. And I think, because of a lot of stuff that was going on at the time, I think it was fast lit quite quickly. which is a good thing. So I'm not saying this in a negative way, but I think because of Black Lives Matter and a lot of stuff that's been going on in the press at this time, I think that it got Universal Pictures off their arse and funded it and put it out there because they thought this was something that needed to be seen, which is a good thing for us.
Yeah.
Thing. So, but other than that, I mean, funnily enough, we don't really have one of these stories about how hard it was to get this to the screen or anything. And I had to I think it's one of those things that, I think there's a bit of simpatico going on with this film, that it was written at the right time, produced at the right time, directed at the right time, and came out at the right time. It's one of those films, though, I don't think we don't have any of these, like, these struggles that went on with this sort of thing that we have with normal films. So, so my hat's on to Jordan Peele for having the right moment at the right time sort of thing. So
yeah, because you kind of do. That's one thing I do kind of wonder is, like, he must have had this somehow on the burner and was writing this, and then with the events of things happening around Black Lives Matter, it was like literally, this a line, and was in the perfect place for him to put this movie out. I mean, we've seen other films too, and it's like, is that just luck that comes out? Like you see certain movies that come out and you're like, wow, that literally came out at the most poignant time. Like, remember Transamerica?
Yeah.
So like that was like around when that movie came out, that's when there was a lot of voice around trans and that community. And then this movie comes out and I was like, well, wait, like, how does that, like, it just kind of, the stars aligned, and it was like the perfect time for that type of movie to come out.
Well, I think that anytime a movie can sit there and hit the pulse before it becomes a massive heartbeat, I think, a bit like Longtime Companion, the HIV/AIDS movie, that came out before any of the other films came out. And I'd sit there and say, out of all those, even I mean, Philadelphia came out too late. I mean, I'm sorry, but I know that everyone likes it because it's a huge movie and Tom Hanks has an affair with Antonio Banderas in it. But for me, that wasn't the movie for me as far as that crisis goes. It was Longtime Companion.
Same.
You got 10 years and this whole circle of friends and how it affects them, and you got to see everything. And even though you got people floating in and out of it, I felt more closely to those people than I did, when Hollywood waited too long, sort of thing. And it's very, very, and like Transamerica is another independent film where now we're getting a lot of stuff coming through about, the transsexual films and stuff like this. So there's starting to be, a lot more being funded and stuff like this. And we'll see how Hollywood deals with this. But with always the independent films, they're always there on the pulse before it becomes anything. And they're right there. And I think with Get Out, what we have is something a bit bizarre where we actually got a major Hollywood that actually there at the right time and right place. They're not as an afterthought. Oh, we need to get on this because this is it. And yeah, my hat's off to being able to do that, because Hollywood doesn't normally do that. As they before, it's normally the independent films, Longtime Companion,
HBO did a good job with Normal Heart. I mean, I think that was another one that kind of mirrors in a lot of ways what Longtime Companion did, which was showcasing a decade of time of like what has transpired.
Well, theater is always one step ahead of Hollywood as far as all that stuff goes. Whether it is Angels in America or Normal Heart, when you're dealing with that issue, or Fences, or all black theater, sort of thing. Whether how even The Wiz was miles ahead of what Hollywood was doing.
Yeah,
when The Wiz was out, Hollywood was doing Shaft and Cleopatra Jones, just or Purplin and all the other shades. So stage shows have always been one step ahead of Hollywood as far as what is on the pulse of what's going on around you. Hair.
And that's what I was going to say. I feel like with this and even Stepford, I could see this becoming like a theatrical thing, because it breaks the third wall down, and you're getting the third wall being broken down with the actual story, but then you're literally breaking the third wall down when you're in theater. And I could see either of these being on a Broadway stage and like kind of playing out, because it's kind of like fits into this world that we live in.
Yeah, I mean, Get Out is more on the pulse than, let's say, Stepford Wives was when it was released in 1975. If Stepford Wives came out in 67, 68, maybe 69,
Yeah.
And the women's movement was just growing. By 75, I mean, the women's movement was kind of like settling down at this point. So Get Out was even more on the pulse than Stepford Wives was. So
that's true. Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're going to cut to a commercial break, cut to the film, and then we'll be back with our discussion on Get Out 2017. Be right back.
Amazon. Oops, wrong Amazon. Although we both contain an array of diversity, the rainforest with all of its animals and us with all of our products, come check us over today and find all the products you need quickly and efficiently. And buy it with one click. And now you can even use us to donate to your favorite charities using Amazon Smile. Amazon Smile is worth your while. Come check us out today.
Forget serial killers, demons, and evil clowns, because a more terrifying, inescapable, unstoppable force is coming to get you. Rich white people. Get Out. Catch the film that proved once again that diversity, quality, and making buttloads of money aren't mutually exclusive. That was the most profitable film of the year, not only because everyone bought a ticket, but because it was so low budget they had to plug the Windows Phone. Wait, they make Windows phones? And it's gone. Meet Chris, master of deflecting awkward conversations.
If you really pushed your body, you'd be a f***ing beast.
Cool. Black is in fashion.
He's never treated any of my boyfriends that way.
Mm-hmm.
And then my dad was my man.
Yep.
Who's so polite, he'll stick around his girlfriend's creepy murder house, even when people are literally screaming, "Get out!" in his face.
Get out! Get out of here! It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal. Forget about it.
Luckily, there's Rod, one of the best movie friends of all time. Watch as the kind of guy who yells at the screen during a horror movie.
She is lying like a mother.
Gets a chance to shine by actually being inside the horror movie.
I mean, I told you not to go in that house.
Thank God for Rod, because the alternate ending is super realistic. I mean, super depressing. Same difference. Enjoy deliciously cruel casting that makes villains out of white people's favorite white people, turning indie darlings, West Wing alums, and girls' into broad caricatures of society's worst impressions of them. And if that makes you upset, now you have some inkling of how black people feel when they watch almost every other horror movie.
Brothers don't last long in situations like this.
Seriously, black people's main roles in horror is to either die first or comment on how often they die first.
The black guy always dies first.
Revisit all the little details you didn't see the first time, like Rose stands up to the cops just so they don't leave a paper trail.
You don't have to give him your ID because you haven't done anything wrong.
The old people drive black cars to symbolize how they're also driving black bodies, and their victims are always wearing hats or wigs to cover up the scars from their surgery, but then try to ignore little details that don't add up, like brains age as fast as bodies, so a transplant wouldn't add that many years. No one ever notices all these guys went missing after dating the same girl. And why does she eat Fruit Loops separate from the milk? That's not a thing white people do, is it? Is it? So gather round for a film that flips your preconceived notions on its head, that progressives can be racist too, that TSA can be useful once in a while.
I'm TS A.
And getting into an interracial relationship is a huge mistake because you can't trust these white girls. Sorry, been listening to a lot of Lemonade? Damn Beckys are everywhere. Starring Everybody Hates Chris. Always bring black up. The Lost Kardashian. Ben Carson. Keener, stir some tea. Sometimes your words just hypnotize me. The White Wing. Mumford Son. And an evocative symbol of the marginalization of black people in America. I mean, black hole, son? The Stepford Wives. I'm just glad this movie did well, so I finally know who's Key and who's Peele. I swear, it's not a race thing. The show is just Key and Peele. They never said which one was which. Seriously, I'm not a racist. In fact, I would have voted for Obama a third time if
I would have voted for Obama for a third term if I could.
Oh, no.
Hello?
What's your favorite scary movie?
I have a bunch of favorite movies. I watch them all on Shudder.com for only $4.99 a month.
That's a scary low price.
But if I had to pick a favorite, it'd probably be Scream.
Oh.
Yeah, it's the only streaming service that lets me watch hundreds of horror movies on demand.
I'll be right back.
Hello? Hello? Hello, are you gonna subscribe? Hello?
Go to Shudder.com to subscribe, if you dare.
And we're back. Sorry that I took so long. I was just putting on my makeup. I hope I look okay. No, so we are back. I'm actually going to give a synopsis of the film Get Out. Now that Chris and his girlfriend Rose have reached the meet the parents milestone of dating, she invites him for a weekend getaway upstate with Missy and Dean. At first, Chris reads the family's overly accommodating behavior as nervous attempts to deal with their daughter's interracial relationship, but as the weekend progresses, a series of increasingly disturbing discoveries leads him to the truth that he never could have imagined. Molly, you're in danger, girl. So to begin the discussion of the film, Keith, what are your thoughts of the film?
This actually, it's kind of interesting because people are sitting there saying about it shows, some of the bad things is it shows how horrible white people are. And to be honest, I think that generalization of white people is the wrong thing to say here. I think this shows the dangers of what white liberal people are like, because people who are on the far left or the far right are bloody hideous. You know what I mean? And the reason why I say that is because, I think that if you got people who are on the far left and they are mixed with a different mix of characters, and I know that, like, basically, if I hang around people who are like just normal people sort of thing, and I meet them for the first time, they don't ask me questions or try to relate to me as either being an American or a gay person or anything like that. We just have conversations and that's it. But I find that if they are far left and they're trying to be very, very open about things, they'll want to talk to me about the Village People or the AIDS crisis, or they want to speak to me about Donna Summers or people outing people or gay conversion therapy and how they're, and they'll tell me everything that they're against a certain stereotype. But I don't find this with normal people. I always find this people with either the far left or the far right who are trying to speak me off, sitting there saying that this is totally wrong. Say they're one extreme or another. But I find that people who are dead centered, I don't actually have conversations like this with normal people. It's only like when I'm in a setting of a certain group of people sort of thing. And I think that, and I do think that, when Jordan Peele sits there and says that the party scene was probably a situation where he found himself into, I would say that situation is probably when he was at media parties. And people, I mean, people in the industry and things like this. Because I think that if you grow up in a normal childhood with a lot of, and I'm talking about, normal town where you have like a lot of different mixes of race and genders and everything out like this is not a big point for you. It's when you grow up in like, a certain like, if you're in a total white area and you never, all you see is white people and you go to school with white people and you work with white people and you never touch anyone. The only time that you have face-to-face contact with anything that's not white, Christian, or whatever is when you turn on the television set. And I think that's how people react. And I have faced it, personally, I've never actually done that because, I have friends from all kind of ethnic regions, religions, stuff like this. And I've never once described any of my friends. It's like, this is my gay friend, this is my black friend, this is my Indian friend, this is my Muslim friend, this is my Jewish friend. I've never once described people in that way. They're just my friends, and that's it, sort of thing. And when they show up and to people, I never, even in my, for instance, like I dated a Sikh and I was with a Sikh for 18 years. And never once I tell my parents I was dating a Sikh person. He was just Mandeep. That's it. What I mean?
Yeah.
And I don't.
But I think that with this, I think what it does call out is, I think if you're a black person and like, for instance, when he first asked his girlfriend Rose, "Hey, did you kind of tell your parents that you're dating a black guy?" That is an issue because he's probably has had multiple situations like that. And I've had other people say the same thing, that it's one of those things where you kind of, it shouldn't be a thing, but it is a thing, right? And so he kind of calls that out, and then he goes to this town, and it's almost like overly like, no, we're totally fine with you. You're a black guy, and we would have voted for Obama third term, and she kind of makes a joke of that. You don't like, that is something that does exist for.
Oh, I think it totally exists, and I think it's.
But then in this scenario too, is it part of the facade, right? Because you also don't, in this, you like now, spoilers, obviously, when you get to a point you realize that they're being used, and they're used as like, being bitted off for their bodies to be able to be, house themselves into, you kind of wonder if they're just saying that to gain your trust and confidence, or if they maybe are racist, and maybe they are just like, oh yeah, whatever. But it's interesting that I've had many of my friends say that is part of their norm. Like, they kind of have to have that approach, and it shouldn't be that way, but it is that way, and I think he just does, as a director, he calls that out, and he says, like, you don't want to, like, the comment with the woman who says, oh, is it true? He's like, what? And he's like, that it's bigger, and it's like, that's something that's sad, and it kind of like calls it out. I don't know if he's calling it out as a way of saying this is a reality, or he's making fun of, like, yeah, this is the shit that people say to us. Like, just know that people have said that to me, and I'm just putting it in the film now, and I'm going to put it out there,
I think that every walk of life does get this to a certain extent. And because I know, for instance, like, if someone finds out that I'm gay, I know someone that says, I knew a gay person once. Like,
yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Or, oh my God, do you know my friend Mark?
Yeah.
My favorite is, oh my God, do you know my friend Mark? I'm like, can you be more specific? Like, why would I know him?
Well, but to be honest, to turn this on its head, I know that I work with a lot of Black people, for instance, they're not, and we're going to call them Black in the UK because they're not African American. They're Afro-Caribbean and Nigerian and African, and they're from. Yeah,
I think the term is now Black because of that. Most people, like you, say you're African American. It's like, no, I'm not really African American. And so the term Black is the socially appropriate term. Yeah,
and I know that if I'm sitting there and I work with six Black girls, and basically sometimes when conversation comes about asking for me, they'll give me white references. Yeah. They don't now, but when I first started, they did. And I think that's because, and it's a bit like when old people talk to young people, they try to look for young, they might, and of course it's totally off screen. It's like they might, you might get someone of our age group talking to a 16-year-old and talk to him about Britney Spears, even though Britney Spears is not relevant to these people anymore. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I do think, and I don't know whether to classify this as stereotyping or being racist or being prejudiced. I think it's a way to trying to make that person feel at ease, though. While you're trying to overly make this person feel at ease, you're actually making them feel more ill at ease.
Yeah, exactly.
But I don't think it's coming from a bad place, though.
Yeah, I don't think it is, but at the same time, I think it's like, it's almost like putting a mirror in front of them and saying to someone, like, you see how kind of that can make someone whatever, right?
Oh, but I totally understand it. I mean,
and I think that's what this kind of does too. And I don't think it's like I honestly think it's like, doesn't this sound silly? Because like you or I are watching this kind of laughing, going, oh, that's pretty silly. A person will be like, hey, yeah, I voted for Obama, like. Or, the other guy, there's a guy who made a comment too. It was at the party, and I can't remember what it was. But it was like, this is stuff they hear. And so I think for him, for the director, this is things he's probably heard or people have said to him, and he just goes, okay, like what? And so that's, some of your best work is from your own personal perspective in life. And I think as a gay man,
I think there is. I mean, I do believe that there's the realism in it.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that I think that because of the realism in it, that I think that sometimes people take it the wrong way, sort of thing. And I think, it needs to be pointed out. But another thing is that, in a way, it needs to kind of be pointed out because, I mean, okay, I'm an American living in the UK, and do you know how many times a week I get asked about fucking Trump because I'm American?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, what do you think about Trump? It's like, I'll meet people who met me, and they'll hear my accent, and the first thing they'll say to me is like, what do you think about Trump?
Yeah.
Which is kind of the same thing.
It's like, because you're basically basing something off of, because you're like, if I say I'm from California and someone's going to be like, oh my God, you must know, and you're like, I kind of, but I'm not, like, you're like, you kind of get thrown that bucket.
What do you feel?
Exactly. Like you get kind of bucketed.
I mean,
and I think that's the important, I think, thing what he's trying to say is you get bucketed, right? You get bucketed into a certain norm of things, and it's now, even for this, I think what he sort of approaches in a very interesting way is how some Black people don't think people are Black enough. Yeah, I mean, I think from this movie, what it does is it calls out like social norms. Like people, they kind of get into these social norms where, and it's not just, it's how white people treat white people, how white people treat Black people, how Black people treat Black people. He calls out all of these things in this film, and it's very interesting because he even makes a comment when the maid comes in and I think at this point the mother or the daughter must have said something, and the maid comes in and she's like, oh, I'm so sorry for unplugging your phone. He makes a comment to his girlfriend beforehand. He's like, Black women have this problem. And she's like, what are you talking about? And like, she's clearly oblivious to this, but this is something that I even had a friend of mine tell me this whole thing, that his Black male friend was going out with a white girl, and his other Black girlfriend was like, you can't date her, she's white, and then that's a you need to date your own kind. So that's a reverse like racism. But he in this movie kind of calls that out, like, like maybe she's a Black woman and she doesn't like me dating a white girl, and like there's one of those instances where,
well, you say that because it's funny, but last week the girls at work, the 6 girls I mentioned previously, they're all Black, from different countries, sort of thing, and they were talking about how they hate seeing, and this kind of touches on what we discussed earlier with the Stepford Wives, how they hate to see that they'll normally have like a Black girlfriend or wife who will be by their side until they become rich and famous, and then they divorce or get rid of that person and marry a blonde girl. Yeah. And he said they don't understand that. Well, it's like that there's this trope with it. This is how they feel. I mean, I'm kind of oblivious to all this sort of stuff because it's not part of me. But they were they had a 2-hour conversation about why is it that when a Black person becomes rich and successful, they have to go out with a white woman. But it's not like they start out with a white woman and they, it's only when they become rich and successful.
Yeah.
And, it's quite funny, but then when you see Get Out, for instance, and let's face it, the Allison Williams' character, she is a well-to-do white woman, but the guys that she's picking up are not poor Black men. They are, they're not. Well, they're Black men who have established themselves. I mean, wasn't the one that's wearing the hat and derby? Isn't he like a jazz musician? And then, then obviously the guy that she's dating at the moment that takes him, that she takes him to the parents' house, he's doing very well for himself because I mean that flat is not cheap.
No, he's a professional photographer. Which, by the way, a little nod to his pairing with Joanne, because she's a photographer as well, or would be a photographer. So I thought that was very interesting that he made his lead character similar to
photographer.
That. Yeah,
but he's doing very, very well in that field because it's not like he's struggling, because if he was struggling, he wouldn't have lived in that. That flat was his. It wasn't her flat. It was his flat. And so you have that going on, sort of thing. And he's dating a white woman. And then at the end of the movie, when she's looking for the next victim, per se, she's going into the college NCAAP, the people who are the prominent people in this thing,
the professional basketball players.
And this is where we have one of the biggest plot holes in Get Out, because the reason why I say it's a plot hole in Get Out is only because, I know that there, with Black Lives Matter and all this other stuff that's going on, personally, I don't think it's a race thing. I think it's a social economic problem that we have here, because I can tell you right now that if you're a poor person, no matter black, white, Asian, or whatever, you are going to be struggling for your whole life. But if you are doing well for yourself, and in this case, I the main character, I think, he might have started out poor, but he's doing very, very well for himself, and a jazz musician. I find it hard to believe that when these people go missing, no one's looking for them, because they are very, very much established in the upper to middle class, higher income brackets, and people will notice. Now, if she was going after the lower income people who are that sort of thing, and they go missing, people don't care.
Well, I mean, he would also, yes, I agree completely that if it is someone who has a prominent status, that someone, I'm assuming your family, would care and say, hey, you're missing. But I think he does call out. But he does kind of call out that, in the abyss of things, when things like this happen, if it was a white girl, in her 20s and she was missing, somehow that does get elevated. It's something that
I think it gets elevated if you are middle class or above, but there are plenty of poor children, and that doesn't matter what race you're coming from, that doesn't get reported.
I think it's actually, he's calling out a statistical thing. I don't know what the statistical value it is, but he is calling out something that's a problem. But he does it in a subtle thing and not a overtly let's talk about all that, And I also I will say too, again, the black on black, white on white, black on white. The black on black is like how you talk and how you say, the way you talk, the dialect you use, any of that is when he sees like a black person at these parties and he's not black. Even that is something that they fight as a cultural norm, is what is black, right? Is it how, and they consider if you talk a certain way, you're whitewashed. And I dated someone who was Peruvian, or is Peruvian. And he has that standard as a Latin man, that it's like, oh, you're whitewashed, you're not Latin enough, you're not black enough, and so that's something that he kind of in a way calls out. And how, is that normal for Chris to call out someone and say, well, a guy who just happens to be talking this way, he's not black enough? So in a way, he's kind of, his character is kind of judging someone he doesn't even know. And he judges that person, he judges another person. It's almost like, oh, you're not black enough, so there's something wrong here, right? So there's something that he does call out, and the director calls out. That's something, an issue as a social norm within their own culture, is like, what is black enough? What is white enough?
Precisely. I think you get that in any kind of subcategory and in the human race. When I say subcategory, I'm talking about religion, ethnicity, and all the other ways that people are dividing up humanity. And I think you do get that. And what happens in your subcultures, they get divided up even more. It's part of the LGBT, whatever alphabet letter they added to it now. It's hard to keep up. But there are subdivisions in that.
Yeah,
and they subdivide that. You're not gay enough. You're you're too effeminate. You're too masculine, or and all this other stuff. Hell, we got lesbians going against transsexuals at the moment, campaigning against them. Inside this thing that's all about equality and diversity. The 6 black women that I work with, they have problems within their own culture groups. Nigerians don't like the Ghananese. The Ghananese don't like the Afro-Caribbeans. The Afro-Caribbeans don't. I got the Nigerian office. I'm working with a person who's first generation British Afro-Caribbean, and she's calling out that she's too white, that she's not black enough. And I get this at work every day.
Yeah. And that's interesting about this film, is they do kind of call out all those social norms that are currently in place. And some, I would say to anyone, if you get offended by, movie like this and you're offended by it, is it because you're not you're so deeply in tone with that norm that you can't break away from it, or is it that something that you feel like you're doing something wrong? Usually you are, so if you are being a bit racist, then you probably are racist, or if you're being sexist, you probably are sexist, or so I feel like if you don't have a problem with it, you take sort of the value of what this movie is, which is kind of calling out people's abilities to cling to a social norm and not break away from it,
I mean, I also think that a lot of problems that we have, and I think this film does point this out as well, is that most of the films we have and the problems that we have in society are normally caused from the very far left. And I think
right. I would say extremes, because you keep saying left. I think you
well, would also the reason why I say the far left is only the reason why the far right. The reason why they don't do anything, so that there's a problem there anyway. The far right don't do anything. The far left try to do too much, and in a way they try to do too much is that they try to lift something up, which is a good thing, but they buy it by bringing something down. And that's not a good thing to do. And that's why I'm sitting there saying that's where we have problems. It's like, okay, yeah, it's great to be this, and yes, we need to accept this, but in order to accept this, we need to trash this other thing. And
but I would also say,
and to be honest, what you should do if you want to lift people up, you lift everyone up together, and you lift everyone up so everyone's at the same level. Don't push someone down to bring someone up, because to be honest, what you've done now is you hated people. Like, for instance, the far left, and I'm saying that they're doing this with good intention, but let's sit there and say, like in this country, for instance, that they decide that they want to get rid of the word Christmas because it offends somebody, right? So in this case, they're saying it offends the Muslims. Now, the problem is it does not offend them. No one's asked them. No one's discussed with them about this. So what they've now done was they pushed down this thing here, and they brought to bring these people up. And what they've done now is they've created this war between the two. So what you have now is you don't have people trying to accept each other's differences. You're getting people all of a sudden with their backs up and not being accepting, because they're thinking that, oh my God, these people complained about the nativity play, for instance, that has upset them and stuff like this. But if you ask people, the normal people that apparently are offended, they're not offended by the nativity play. It's these do-gooders who sit there and said they're going to be defended by it, but no one has. These Muslim people have never complained about it whatsoever. No one ever has. I think it's now. What instead of doing that, what they could have done was, okay, let's celebrate. We're living in a Christian country. Let's celebrate the Christian religion, but let's also celebrate the Muslim religion at the same time.
Yeah.
So
I think that,
and that's where
you're seeing
we go wrong.
Of that too, and I don't think that's it's part of the problem. Again, we go into the norms of way people are, the way they bucket themselves. I think all liberals are treated a certain way, all Democrats are treated a certain way, all Republicans are treated a certain way, and these buckets that they're defined by is like all of a sudden that every liberal person is that way, or every conservative is that way. And I think it's like, it's not that. I think really what happens is like, yes, we all should be trying to figure out a way to rise each other up and lift each other up, and not bucking ourselves into these, well, if you're celebrating this and I can't celebrate that, because you can say the same thing on the conservative side as you're saying on liberal side. Conservatives,
I think when you were the far right, I think the far right are just as bad. That's what I say.
Yeah.
Far right,
so I think it's like
all. That's the problem.
Yeah, and I think it's like not to get too far off the rails here with this. I think with this movie, what it tries to do is kind of awaken these sort of really nasty norms that are there that people maybe not see, and you kind of go, wow, do people actually say that? Yeah, people do actually say that. Or do people treat people that? Yeah, they do. And here's the sort of that the conundrum of it all, and then with the twist, right? Obviously, it's the twist. The biggest problem that I had with this was like, why? Like, what was the whole purpose of? Because the people didn't seem overtly racist or anything like that. It was just that black people were stronger and faster, and like that's why they wanted their bodies. And it was like a weird, like it wasn't really explained. It's like it's like that whole.
I'm gonna say this, and I'm not sure how comfortable this is gonna make anyone feel. And I'm taking this from Whoopi Goldberg. Whoopi Goldberg's live on Broadway, and she does this live show. And the reason why and this is from her words, this is not my belief or anything like this, but the reason why Black people in America, this is American Black people, the reason why they're stronger and faster, and they have and sometimes they have all these contributes, not everyone does, but we're generalizing here. And the reason why they have those attributes, it has to do with the slave trade. And the reason why they do, because they would take the strongest of Black men with the strongest of Black women, and because they were considered livestock. And I'm not sitting there saying that
that makes sense, because if you're gonna do the natural selection, the same would say with dogs and like you're trying to breed the strongest people, because back then they were using them as labor. So you would.
Well, they were stock. They're like farm animals. Not to reduce the human kind of farm animals, but I'm saying it was thought of that way. And this is and Whoopi Goldberg explains this a lot better than I'm explaining it, because with me explaining it sounds like I'm a racist pig.
But no, it doesn't, because you're just stating sort of what she said, but it's also that gives maybe that is exactly what the director's trying to say is.
That's what makes it. Yeah. But that's the reason why you have them better in sports and things like that. And that's the reason why, in certain fields, that's why they're strongest in those fields. But now the thing is, you're, in an American field, and this is the American side of things. Of course, the people I work with who are from Nigeria and other places, they look at it differently because, but this is an American Black thing.
Yeah.
Thing. It's not, maybe Afro-Caribbean, because that's the re-education centers. And the Caribbean countries, the reason why they are there, they were the re-education centers before they would move them into the marketplace. And this is very uncomfortable talking about this to a certain extent.
No, I mean, I think it's just, I wish we, in a way, and on this specific one, I think I really wish we would have had someone who is Black to kind of have that point of view, because we are two white men and we have our own perceptions of the way the world is and the way, how I was raised. There was racism, very deeply rooted in my family, and you do fight those norms, whether you either embrace them or you fight them, right? And I fought them, and there's things that I'm still learning from all of the diverse people in my life. And that's why I think I live in New York for that reason specific, is because there's a mixing pot of cultures and subcultures that exist here. And so to me, it's like, I think it's always important to have conversations like this. And especially this film, I think that's part of what it does, right? Yeah, it does stir the pot, and it makes people have that conversation, an uncomfortable conversation, because you do need to have that. You don't want to be that person to a friend who constantly says racist things to never say something and be like, I just need to point something out. You have to be, and it to them, they might be totally offended and say, oh my God, I'm not racist. I had my Black friend, and you're like, yeah, that's racist. Like, and you kind of, and so I think he kind of does that in a very subtle way with this movie, but more so, I think he wanted to create a film based on something that he really respected and admired, and just put the Black cultural spin on it. Yeah.
And I think that he does it very, very well. I do think that the shortcoming of the film is the science behind it, because there's something that when we get to the end of the film, there's some things that don't quite make sense to me. But they, even in the film world and where it takes place, it's a bit like, but then again, in Stepford Wives, there's some stuff that doesn't quite make sense, when you start thinking too closely to the science.
Yeah. Well, and I kind of feel like they could have left it out completely, because, right, what happens behind the curtain, you just don't know. And they get into the surgery and stuff. You're like, wait, what's going on? But then the psyche's still there. And it's like, yeah, it's a real.
Well, but see, I understand, like, taking someone who's talented and well-to-do and artistic and those attributes and putting them into another body. I understand that.
I thought it was more like a neurotransmission.
And I understand why that people are buying or selling people for this. What I don't understand, which doesn't make much sense, is to put it in the opposite way, where you're taking your mother and father and putting them into these other two people, and creating them as servants.
Well, no, I agree.
And that's the point that doesn't make too much sense.
Yeah, that I would love to interview the director and say, wouldn't you have them as like the cute next door neighbors, right? Like, and they would be a little bit awkward and be like, what I pictured those characters is more like young bodies, but then the exterior is like, you know, the woman dressing up with like, you know, like an old sweater and like, you know, like dressing older and not fitting and not being weird, like him looking going, why is she in her like what 30s? Maybe 30s, 40s. Yeah. And why does she look like she's in her 80s? You know, because she's dressed that way matronly, and have them be the cute little next door neighbors. They make them the servants. And I'm like, why would you make your mom and dad the servant? Like, I'm like so confused.
Yeah, that was my problem, because it's like, if I could find a way, both my parents are dead now. If I could find a way to give them everlasting life, and let's sit there and say, I'm going to transport them into another person's body so I can keep them with me forever and they'll never die, sort of thing.
Yeah.
I'm not going to make them wait on me hand and foot and do my laundry.
I know.
House and do my gardening and stuff like this, unless they wanted to do that.
Or unless you really hated them.
Well, precisely. It's like, you know, I'm not going to put you in the old folks home. I'm going to make you wait on me for hand and foot for the rest of my life.
I thought that too. And I thought that too, because I was like, well, why would they? Because even like the other people, they kind of sell them off, and they're like with the, you know, now they're with their new partner, right? I thought, well, you could still put them together and then put them in the little house next to each other. So they're like the first ones that were created, right?
Yeah.
And put them in a house, like a little cottage next door, and they'll be your like little neighbors. But yeah, it was really weird.
Well, another thing is, I would think that if you're trying to be this, you know, we're going to call them liberal white family, because that's what they are in the film. I mean, that's not me categorizing. This is what they're described with in the film. This liberal white family. And, you know, you got this daughter that's bringing black men home so they can auction them off and do whatever they're going to do with them. Why not break this couple, people that just live in your home and part of your family, to help show how open-minded you are and how wonderful you are? And not that, you know, these two people helped your parents before they died, and we love them so much that we hired them as servants.
I know, yeah.
You know, and the thing is, like, right then and there, it's like, okay, well, you're helping them out, but they're like live-in servants as a matter of fact as well. So they're not even, so basically these people don't have a social life outside your family. And so, that part of it
was a little clunky. It was clunky. Yeah.
Very clunky. And I just think that I think if he turned it around where these people are living with them and they're like total equals and they are a member of the family, first of all, when he walked into the family, and then he's, you know, did kind of like where Stepford Wives does it quite well. He walks into the situation and he notices that there's something a bit odd about them when he continues talking to them, and it kind of gets odder and odder as he gets to know them. Where in this fact, when he walks into the situation, it's like, oh, they're so liberal, but they have blacks. You know, they got a black gardener and a black housekeeper, which. And to be honest, and this is where the film is kind of out of step, because to be honest, they probably, if you're going to have servants, they're probably not going to be black. They're probably going to be Hispanic.
Not. They're going to be white.
Yeah, because that's where.
Or no, but if you're very affluent and you're liberal and you want to be like, you want to have that image of like, I'm not that type of person. You would have a white. You wouldn't have a Hispanic. You would have like whomever, right?
Yeah.
Or they would, you know. I just think, it's like it's a very big pothole there that's in that part. And then the other part was which I didn't care for, was the brother. He was just weird. Like, and I get it. They were just trying to create some like kooky character and really weird, but I just didn't get his role in that whole thing. And he came in, I'm like.
Do you think it's because he's with a rock band and maybe they didn't know exactly what to do with him, so they put him in this role, and so therefore they gave him like two key scenes, but you don't really see him beyond those two key scenes? He's just a
it's just weird. Like, he gets kind of plopped in there as this sort of like just a pot stirrer, because then he's like, he wants to fight him, and I'm like, what? I'm like, what? Like, it was just really weird.
And I don't know Jordan Peele, and I don't know what his view on this, because it's hard to, he doesn't really say much about the brother character at all in any of the documentaries I saw. And I thought maybe if he got a better actor, that maybe you would have the brother would have interspersed a bit more with the rest of the movie, because you have the dinner scene and then he acts a bit weird and stuff like this. And then you don't see him until the final reveal, and then he comes out with his lacrosse thing, and that's it.
It comes after. Yeah, it comes out. Yeah,
you don't see him with the group of rich white people, which and which I found also weird. You have like these rich white people, and then you have this one Asian guy, which is kind of like, here's Mr. Smith, here's Mr. Johnson, here's Mr. Hakamono. He's like, what?
Yeah, I know.
And what does it feel to be African American? And my question would be like, what does it feel to be Asian? You know what I mean? What are you talking about? You know what I mean?
I do love that the actor, the way he responds to things is like, it's hysterical because he's just like, what the fuck am I here for? Like, he just is like, why am I fucking here? And I actually loved a lot of the scenes where he is watching them, and it's like what I really appreciate is sometimes it's not the dialogue, it's just watching people and seeing how they react and how they like the scene where he goes to go upstairs to check his phone and all of them are talking and all of a sudden it's like, and they all get really quiet. Oh, it's such a great scene because it's like not the thing that's said, it's the thing that's unsaid, and how they're all like just watching, it's such a great scene.
I think it's cast very, very I do think, but
his friend was killing me. His friend was my favorite, actually.
His friend was my favorite. I found, I think the reason why that some people might have a problem with this movie, and I do think that it's white people who have an insecurity about themselves and where they place themselves. And I think, and maybe I don't know where it's coming from because personally, I found that the rich white people are horrible.
In general.
And I find that, I don't want to mock our sponsors because I know they're paying our bills, but I find, generally speaking, and this is a generalization, this is not on a face-to-face, one-by-one situation, but I find that sometimes the more money you have, the more out of touch you are with people and out of life and out of everything.
Yeah.
And I think that, and it shows that, and they always say like horrible things, and that's what I think I was, relating to earlier when I say, the far left liberals. I'm talking about far liberals with money because far left liberals with no money really don't make the news and stuff like this. And I do think that they'd always come out with, whatever where we are. I always think my thing is to always be centrally located, just be center.
Yeah. I just think it's also money is a greedy thing in it. And for this, it's actually interesting because it goes beyond just doing this for his family or doing it for the family. It goes like now it's like an auction. It's like an auction. So how much are being paid to do and to like make money. And so,
and you wonder, and it also made me wonder, like, where's this money going to?
Yeah, exactly.
Because they don't need the money. These people driving up in their black limousines don't need the money. Are you donating it to a rainforest fund, or, are you putting back into the community, or what's the story is? And that's what I found a bit bizarre sort of things, because you don't know exactly what. And I found the auction thing a bit odd because obviously there's money being changed hands.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Did you see that coming? Because I felt like I definitely, when I first saw it, I was like, yeah, see, this is coming. Because they were all kind of sizing him up. Like you had the one woman about his member, like basically how big it is. And then you have the other person who is like, oh, well, bend down. Like he wanted to see him actually like golf. He's like, are you a good golfer? And I'm like, what the hell? What the, like, why are these people doing? And then I was like, oh, I think they're trying to size him up like, hey,
I know Tiger Wood.
But I thought it was more like I thought they were gonna auction him off and basically reprogram them like a robot. I didn't think it was like a swapping of the mind type of thing. I didn't put that together, and I was like, oh, that makes sense why most of the people there are either have some sort of ailment or really old, like it's like, oh wait, they're trying to get a new body.
Well, but it's kind of weird they're saying that, but I don't know because the one thing that we got, they're basically transporting his mind into this white guy's mind, aren't they? So he can have eyesight. They're not transporting the other way around, are they? I wasn't quite sure.
So that's why I wasn't sure if they're taking, because it seems like they're opening the brain up and they're putting it like almost like you're taking a USB, thing, and you're putting it in, and you're taking the brain's consciousness from this body and putting it into this body. And then in the back of your brain, you're always kind of like floating in the, what do you call it? The something space, deep space, or the
kind of like deep space, the silent space, or I forgot what she called it.
But that was, oh God, can you imagine? Oh, like just floating in nowhere, like
But see, I'm not a bit confused with what exactly is happening. Are they taking the black person's mind and putting it into the white person's mind?
No, they're taking the white person's mind, like they're basically opening his brain up and tapping in and extracting out, and then they're going to open the other person's brain. And
so the blind guy is going to be living his life through the black guy.
Correct. And then basically because you're then in the back of the mind, you're still there, but you're not there. Like you're kind of like in the floating space. Because remember, he's telling him in the video, and he says,
"Yeah."
He goes, "You'll be there, but he's like in the floating space." He's like, "Yep, you got it." And he's like, "You're quick."
Because I didn't know if they were going back and forth. That sometimes they'll take the black mind and put it into like so that way he could see. He's blind, but now he'll be the white guy who can see.
No, he's just using his body as a vehicle. It's like taking like a little flash drive and sticking it into your brain and downloading all of you into that, and then putting the flash drive into him and like downloading your consciousness into him. But then you're overriding everything.
But what I don't now understand is, and this is now I have, because I thought it was the other way around, so obviously I missed that. I thought that the grandparents, they moved into being servants sort of thing, so I could understand that because they wanted them around, even though I wasn't quite happy with the capacity they're keeping them around as. Now what I have here is, because I thought they're doing it, I thought they were going to do it the other way around sort of thing, which kind of made sense. What doesn't make sense is that if black people are having a hard time in society, but due to acceptance and because of race and the problems that have been happening in the world because of the color of their skin, first of all, how do you manage the money side of things by taking the money from the white rich person and putting him into this given to this black person, because they're going to walk around in that body and that name now. Well, and how is this person in their rich white society going to be mixing in a now Afro-American society?
Well, so what he's doing is actually, it's really smart. So again, you go back to black culture and how if a black successful man, if a black man becomes very successful and he retains his cultural roots and is able to be Afro chic and Nigerian chic, whatever, right? Then he's succeeded in being a successful black person. However, if a black person appropriates white sort of like mannerisms and personalities and all that and become successful, it's almost an offensive to someone who's black, because you now become whitewashed, right? You relinquish your blackness to become white. And so it's kind of very interesting that he did that, because it's like basically saying, this white person appropriated a black vehicle body and like, look at me, I'm a successful black man, but not really, because you've been appropriated by a white man. You see what I mean? So then it's
but when you look at the banking issues and the money issues, and this rich white person all of a sudden throws his whole money account into this.
Well, I'm sure it leads it to the person. It probably leads it to the spouse. So then, like, let's say he physically said he's dead, right? Because I'm assuming what they do with the white body is like put it out of its misery, kill it. So then the white body's gone.
Okay, that makes sense. And then
they bury the body, and then the money goes to the wife, and then the wife has some money, and then again, so let's say now the wife dies, right? The wife is going to die. They get a black woman. She takes over the black body. Now look at this couple, perfect black couple who, physically fit. They got the money, but notice they're very whitewashed. They're very like, why are their mannerisms very whitewashed? And like, why are they? Because they have now become, so that's what's very interesting about it. It's like, you retain your culture. You should try to retain your culture, where Latins have a lot of the same, they can talk to this more, where it's like people who've come from other countries and have to speak English, right?
Mm-hmm.
In order for their kids to be successful and have maintained success, is that they stop speaking Spanish, they stop speaking Portuguese, they start really focusing on speaking English and perfect English. And so to that culture, Latins will be like, that's offensive because why are you relinquishing what you are to be that, right? And so that's sort of the appropriation that happens. And he kind of does it in a way that's like, I didn't even think about that. I literally just thought, well, yeah, he's basically like taking that conscious and putting it into that body. And so for Black people to see another Black person that way, it's like you're selling out. Right? You're selling out. You're no longer a Black person because you now are this, right? So I think that's what where the messaging is kind of where he's going with that, you know?
Well, I mean, Spike Lee did it in a movie called School Days, which is a film that came out in about 85. And he had this musical number. It's a musical. It's people out there who've never seen it, it's very hit and miss, the movie. There's some great things. Trisha Campbell's fantastic in it, and she's always amazing. But there's some things that are there. But there is this musical number in it called Jigaboos and Wannabes. And basically, the Jigaboos are the ones who keep the afro, keep natural and everything like that. And the Wannabes are the ones with the Beyonce hair and the wigs and the hair extensions. And it's quite interesting. And and before anyone goes off on this is written and directed by Spike Lee, who writing and directing it from his own understandings and his own beliefs and the way that he was raised and the people that he knows. So it does it comes from a world of truth, from his truth.
Yeah.
And but it is quite interesting. You do watch this film, and this basically is about these universities and fraternities and sororities, and one caters to the people who are more naturally Black, and the other sorority and the fraternities deal with the people who are wannabes. Well, they call them wannabes. They probably got a new name for them, but in '87 they were called wannabes at that time. Yeah. And I guess this plays into that. Though,
I mean, there's a show on Netflix too that's called Dear White People, and it appears to be that it's like offensive towards white people, but if you watch the actual show, it talks about how Black people treat Black people, and what is Black, and what is, like, if you're too white, then you're not Black, or and it goes to beyond just being Black. Gay culture goes the same thing, goes beyond gender, how women, if heaven forbid you wear jeans too much, you're not feminine enough, or heaven forbid you're a man and you wear pink, you're not masculine enough. It's like, there are just those differences that happen and how that gets called out.
But I do have to sit there and say that if you want to become successful in almost every single field, you do need to change part of your personality. Like, for instance, I soften my natural accent, and over the years, my American accent softened. Now, if I go back home, I talk more like this the whole time, and I tend to slide back into that. But because when I'm with patients or when I'm dealing at work, I talk differently, I dress differently, I act differently, and sort of thing, because you have to become successful. Yeah, and I think and
you become adaptable. I mean, that's the thing, is you learn to adapt,
And so I can understand why, the thing is, as far as Latino concerned, I can understand why they would want their people to speak this perfect English, because if something happens and you have a thick Latino accent, you're not going to excel very far in the world of business. It's gonna basically it's gonna stop you. And if you act, talk too Black or too Asian, or or you're too Chinese or too Japanese, you don't have the perfect English, you don't have the, and you have to like change for business. It's mainly for business. I don't think it's done for a social thing, unless you want to hang out with the people you work with to get ahead. So then,
well, I think it is, though, because it starts with schools, and a lot of schools, depending on the schools you go to, you can either have a school that embraces all of your diversity and differences and celebrates that, while also just suggesting that you need to learn English in order for you to take the classes, because that's all of our teachers speak English, right? Mm. But you have those like in the like I read this I read this piece. It just basically talks about this family that moved from Puerto Rico and how the family was so tightly knit together, and their normal life, their natural normal life was at home. But the moment those kids walked out the door into the real world, that wasn't the real world. The real world was their home. Everything else was a fantasy and a fictional thing. And then as they went to school and the teachers and the principals came to the parents and said, look, your kids are not succeeding. They're not succeeding because all they know is how to speak Spanish. And we need them to learn how to speak English because they're not going to succeed. Well, what would any good parent do? A parent would say, enough. Like, you got to focus on your education and I need you. But what they did was they flipped the table. Suddenly the real world was outside the doors and what was foreign was inside the doors, right? So like their home became foreign because their parents literally just stopped talking to them. They just would say very little things in Spanish to them. They, would pick up English words from them and learn English words, but they had to, they believed they had to completely abandon that culture in order to adapt to the outside world, which was reality, right? And so the author talks about this, but then talks about how it kind of makes him sad because, this is when he was a kid, and now that he's an adult, he barely remembers how to speak Spanish anymore because he literally just took that and threw it to the side. And how, other people within his culture, it's like he'll go see family members and they're like, oh, yeah, you're not Puerto Rican, you're white. You're like, they, in their way, they kind of now shun that, that kid and put him in this other bucket. Like, you're no longer fit in this community. So it's like a lot of people kind of go through that it's good to be adaptable. No doubt about that.
What should have happened is I think that there's nothing wrong with being multifaceted. You got to be multidimensional. And unfortunately, if you're going to live in an English-speaking country, you're going to have to speak the language very, very well if you want to succeed. Same thing like if I was to move to Spain or France tomorrow, and if I want to succeed in my field, the thing is, let's sit there and learn Spanish tomorrow, okay? And I speak Spanish. I could not practice what I practice here in Spain because my Spanish is never going to be good enough.
Yeah.
It's never going to be good enough because at the same time, when I'm dealing with patients, they got to be able to understand what I'm saying. And if we have we can't hire doctors who have thick accents that have difficulties, their English has a thick accent on it because of the people that they have to deal with on a well balance, and you have to look at the full society. So I do understand, but at the same time, we're this Puerto Rican family. What they should have done is the parents should learn English better, but at the same time, still keep Spanish because they should have had both Spanish and English. Same thing.
Well, this is also a time. I think when this was written is
probably
like
70s.
Yeah, no, it was like early 60s, 70s. Yeah, so it's
which is totally different.
Yeah, different time. Right now, a person can come over. And that's not the case anymore. Now kids are teaching their kids kids are teaching their parents how to speak English, and they're like, oh yeah, and there's Rosetta Stone, or Dad, do what I do, watch, the news and just sit there. And that's how most people absorb. It's kind of amazing how cultures will come in and just by listening to television over and over and over again, like news and how quickly, my friend is from Brazil. You would never ever know that his Portuguese is like, he'll speak it and all of a sudden I'm like, wow, I forget that you speak Portuguese because he speaks better English than I do. Oh, yeah. Like he's so like his words, he's so focused on saying everything right and appropriate,
Yeah. Well, it's a bit like Isaac. Isaac's English is second, but his writing skills are far superior than most CVs that come through my desk.
Yeah,
because
you focus more on that in the beginning. Yeah,
he does it properly. He speaks it properly. Where most people who speak English don't properly. Now, to flip this around, I can sit there and say that most English-speaking people are probably the worst people when they go and live in another country that doesn't speak English.
Yeah.
Because I know plenty. I mean, there are places in Spain where English people live there for 10, 15, maybe 20-some years, and they still don't know a lick of Spanish. Which is
horrible because it's precisely. But it goes again to say you kind of have to abandon, falling back on English, right? You got to kind of go and just try your hardest not to be like, bathroom. You're like, no, baño, and you just, because I think it's just habit, because most people understand English to go,
yeah, precisely.
Bathroom. What? Bathroom. And you're like, oh my God, learn the freaking word.
Well, if you say bathroom over here, they look at you kind of weird. They go, do you mean toilet?
Yeah.
So it's like,
yeah.
And that's the problem with English. So many different words as well, which is, pretty horrendous. But yeah,
going back.
But I do think that, you have to, I don't know. But the thing is to become successful, I'm not quite sure if that's ever going to change because at the end of the day, I think that's when you have to look at corporations themselves and how they bring people in and whether they're able to deal with that. Because at the end of the time, I mean, where I work, I have 8 managers above me. And the thing is, I don't, the thing is, when people come to work for, this level, I'm not hiring them, but, they're going through this is what they think that society needs, sort of thing.
Yeah.
But to flip it, I got some Muslim patients who've been here 40, 50 years. And because they're female, they never learned English.
Yeah.
And they're isolated. So you have that problem as well. So I think it's a multifaceted problem, but I think at the end of the day, I think the more language you learn that you should be proud of what you have. But at the same time, you have to fit in your surroundings at the same time. But I think any time that you're discriminating anyone or calling anyone out for however they chose to lead their life, I think that you're wrong. I'm sorry, but I don't think that, if you're going to be gay, for instance, I can speak from experience. There's no such thing as too gay or not gay enough. I think that you just have to be you, and everyone. And I think that's where we need to start from. Everyone just needs to accept everyone for what they are, and that's it.
Yeah. And that's the thing is and because it's like a paradox, right? We are all so different, and yet we all want each other to be the same. And it's like it's a sad little conundrum where it's like, where if you don't fit in that bubble or you don't fit in that circle that, in the gay community, perfect example, it used to be unified. And then I think it just slowly started to deteriorate. And so now it's like you have the bears and the twinks and the, emos, you have the metrosexuals, you have that, you just can go on and on and on, on and on. And it's trying to bring it all back together and saying it really just doesn't matter. We're all human. And in this, in this movie, for instance, like the circumstance of fight or flight, we all have that ability to either fight back when we know something is fundamentally wrong and we know something is not right. And what we do is either fight, or we, don't do anything, we fight or we flight, we run. But then you can also have that you don't do anything, like Joanne, and who died, So one thing I'm glad they did with this movie, and they altered the ending. Apparently, that was one of the plausible ending, was that he does succumb to becoming change, and that, Rod finds him and he's like, no, everything is fine, my friend. How are you?
Well, the one ending I saw is where he's actually in prison.
Yeah.
And to be honest, part of me quite likes that ending where he's in prison, because it kind of kept reality. And he sits there, he goes, oh, we need to get you out. And he goes, no, I'm fine because it's finished now, sort of thing. Now, and I thought that for me on a social political level, I think that speaks better. But I'm not sitting there saying that the ending that the final ending is worse. But I'm saying it would have left me looking at things also from a social political point of view about how wrong this is.
Yeah. No, I agree, because even when he's strangling her in the car, when the cop car pulls up, you're like, fuck. And that's all I could say was like, fuck, are you kidding me? Because then what everyone would know would be like, oh God, a black man strangling a white girl. Well, he's definitely going down for this. And that, like you said, that would have left it in a place where people would have been like, this is so wrong. This is so wrong, and it's like they kind of deserved it, but it's wrong.
I mean, the happy ending on it was, I mean, to be honest, Rod is probably the best character in the film.
Yeah,
because he's speaking for the audience that you're watching it, and that's what's great about him. And I think that he's a major part of the film. But with him coming at the end, there is this tacked on happy ending sort of thing. But But then again, when I was watching the film the first time, and he's killing, he kills the brother, he kills, the mom, he kills the father, he kills the housekeeper, he's got his fingerprints on everything.
I know.
When he gets in the car with Rod, he doesn't have his bag with him, he doesn't have his computer with him, and I'm thinking, it's like the police are coming to get your ass.
Or is it like you as a TSA person are like, we need to report this because you're obviously you're gonna go down for this, right? You're gonna go down. One of my other favorite scenes was when he's trying to record Rose, and he's like, "Oh, hold on, I know this bitch is lying. She's lying, and I know she's lying." And then he tries to record her, and she's like, "Oh, you knew you had a crush on me," and he's like, "What? No." She like flips the table. She was crazy. Oh my gosh.
Well, the funny thing about it is Allison Williams said that she was cast because he's seen her in Peter Pan and Marnie, and he wanted to make people feel like Marnie and girls, and he said it would make it easier for people to trust her. And to be honest, it's because she was in Girls, I didn't trust her from the moment I saw her because I thought she was always like a horrible bitch in that TV show. Because the thing is, I always find this is nothing against the actors, but I think there's always this coldness to her. There's never anything warm about this actress.
Yeah,
Girls, and she's cold in here. Even when she's supposed to be like flirty and nice, there's always this. I'm sorry, but she always plays this white privileged girl, And I'm gonna,
uppity.
I'm gonna use white privilege here, and she is the white privileged girl, and she was in Girls, and she is in this, and there's no warmth to her character at all.
Yeah, there's no redeemable quality because you want to believe that she doesn't know, but then you're like, there's no fucking way that you could not know what was going on, like because at one point. Even when you start to like piece together like things are happening before he even finds the photos, you're like, no, she knows. Like, there's got to be a way that. How do you not know your family is acting this way? Like, there's no way.
Well, actually, I would imagine that the reason as a plot device in it is that obviously when he finds the box of photos, there are endless pictures here. I mean, this is not her first time on the rodeo here.
No.
And so I think that by the time that she brings him there, I think she's a well-rehearsed machine there. I mean, it works like clockwork, doesn't it? So obviously it's like,
But I didn't get where he was.
I mean, she
had like 15 pictures. Like, it was more than that. I mean, but also the fact that he's like, okay, let's go. And he still trusts her, and that's what was kind of frustrating because he's like, "Where's the keys? Where's the key?" I'm like, "Do you think she's going to give you the keys? Like, what?" And then she's like, "Oh, I'm not going to give you these keys, right?" I'm like, "Shocker!" Like, duh.
But you know what I got from that scene? It's quite funny that you say that because what I got from that scene is that he's put it together that he knows that
Rose, yeah.
But when he's asking for the keys, he just wanted her to admit it, sort of thing.
Oh, okay.
For me, that's what I got from it. But but then again, it's film, so I think But I thought that he knows. At that point, I thought he knows.
Did you get this too? Because someone else had pointed this out to me was when he gets pulled over in the beginning and they hit the deer, the police officer comes, whatever.
Yeah.
How she's so defensive and like he was like, "Well, I need your license." She's like, "Why do you need his license? He wasn't driving." She didn't want the police officer to have his license because then they would have ran it and there would have been a trail.
Yeah, she didn't want the paper trail. I know that people view that scene as that, oh my God, this is a white cop going after a black guy. And she's
they do that too. They do that is something he plays into. Yeah.
Well, to be honest though, in most police, I asked the policeman friend of mine about this scene actually, and I go, "Can I ask you a real question?" He goes, "Anytime that you're involved in any kind of accident, they look at IDs of everyone in the car. It doesn't matter what race is. So that's standard cop procedure, and that's just basically so when they put in the report." Like because the insurance,
they know everyone who's there. Yeah,
they know everyone who's there, even though if you hit an animal. Because also when you put in the insurance form for the car, whether you hit an animal or not, apparently that in the insurance form they need to know who was in the car, who was in the passenger seat, and who was in there, and they need the ID numbers for both. So when they find, and then what they do is you file it into the insurance. The insurance will need the police report, which would have the number on it, and that needs to match the police report. And that's the reason why it's done. Because I thought to myself, because the first time I saw the movie, I was like, oh, okay, we're here now, sort of thing. We're at this, police killing black people sort of thing. And I thought that's what it was about.
Yeah.
And then when she said that, I thought, good on you. But then when I found, after I saw it again, I was like, oh, she doesn't want the paper trail. And I figured out the paper trail part of it. I was like, okay, she doesn't want the paper trail.
But it's interesting
and then I called my cop friend and I go, can you ask me if you realize not? I was watching this movie. I didn't tell him the movie. I go, and if someone hits something, do you get IDs from everyone in the car if they hit an animal? And he goes, yes, that's standard police procedure. And I was like, oh, okay. So
but he does. The good thing is like he does play both, right? Because it's like, yes, that is procedure, but yes, that has happened. So to me, it's like he's either so brilliant that he plays it out like both to be like, oh, look at this is how they're gonna treat him, and then it's like, no, but if you look, that's actually protocol, and it's her protecting herself and her family. Like, I don't want him on this, and like you can put my information down, but just don't put him on here. Yeah.
Yeah,
and she uses that. She's smart because she uses it against the police officer because you know what? Go ahead, you're going to do this. Oh, look, you're just like the other police officers who do this to black people. Do you want to be one of them? And it worked. It worked. She used that as a method to get him to not do that, and like was able to get away with it. And you wonder if she's used this before, if that's a tactic that she's used before to get people to be like, oh, bait and switch. Don't pay attention to this. Pay attention to this.
Well, I mean, it is a very well rehearsed scenario. I mean, I think, I'm sitting there saying all the 15 to 20 some odd men that she's brought through, plus the one female, because she was friends with the female at one time as well.
Yeah.
Don't know if that was lesbian or she just picked her up as a friend, but I
wouldn't put it past her. I'm pretty sure she would do anything to get,
Well, that the conversation's being had as they're being taken away to, obviously there's the same thing that they probably said the same lines to every single person. Oh, I know Tiger Woods. Oh, I would have voted for Obama 3 times. Da, 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 da. Because to be honest, she foretells what he's going to say. She foreshadows that on the sofa. Did he pack your toothbrush? Or did your father know that I'm black? Yes, I know, but don't worry about it. They're very, very open-minded. But he'd probably say that he voted for Obama 3 times.
And then he's like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So obviously it must be a very well-rehearsed machine.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, there is understanding that the brother is in on it as well, and he brings people back as well.
Well, he's the one who brought the first guy. Mm. He's the one because he finds a helmet in his car. So he's the one that in the first part of the movie where the guy's walking down the street.
Yeah, I know he's in his car, but see, I was unclear about here I go again with the way I put it together.
He does it more. Apparently the brother does it more balls to the wall. Like he'll see a black person in the neighborhood and just be like, you, and grabs them. Where she just I think she actually enjoys luring them and being like, "Hey, baby, I love you,"
Well, I think she likes having sex with black men.
Yeah, so that too.
Because it's all a sexual relationship, and obviously, I mean, this is some of the things that kind of go a bit aware as well. It's like, okay, she was with this guy for 5 months, so if she's with this guy for 5 months, there's going to be some kind of trail with these two. It's like a couple, and he just disappears all of a sudden. And it's like
his friend. I mean, his friend knew her and talked to her. That was the other thing that's weird. Yeah. Why would you be like, "Hey, let me talk to him"? And he's like, "Hey, what's up?" Oh, remember she makes a joke with him when she's in the car. I mean, why would you even talk to him? Like what? So there's. To me, I think she just likes playing with her food. She's like a cat. She just likes batting the mouse around.
See, I took it that because they've been together for so long that that they can have this jokey relationship. Like I have jokey relationships with my other half's friends. Sort of thing.
No, but I'm saying she.
So I thought it more
talks
like
to
this.
His friend. She deliberately talks to his friend. So is it like she just doesn't think like he's going to come looking for him?
Yeah, but
or is it maybe a 2-for-1-er?
Well, I thought that's what I thought. I thought that therefore she's keeping him on the good side because he might be the next.
Yeah, or he comes to look for him, and she's like, "Oh my God, he's hurt! Please, you got to come here." And then now she's got another guy, like another victim.
But I mean, if you're together with someone for 5 months, obviously, and then you go off on a weekend together, I mean, okay, I know that this guy, I know that his mom died, and obviously his father's still there. Not sure, we don't know if he has brothers or sisters, but he must have a network of friends that know these two people together, and he goes off and disappears afterwards.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's where I say that there's where some of the plot holes come in when you start overthinking this film a little bit. And it's like,
yeah.
You know, okay, I know that there's Rod there, and Rod provides, you know, the audience view and stuff like this. But in reality, if they've been together 5 months, you know, there's going to be a whole lot more people there. You know, you didn't just tell, you know, you go, oh, what are you doing this weekend? I'm at work. You know, I got my pictures up at the because he's a photographer that this guy knows his work, sort of thing. So obviously, he's got a name for himself. He's developed a name for himself. He's doing very well. He's living very, very well. Financially, so obviously he's very good at what he does. So therefore, that, you know, the better, you know, if he was a poor person living on the dole in a council estate and the person disappears, I can understand a bit more.
Yeah.
That person might not go missing because this person's a shut-in. But if you're at that level of success, chances are there's a lot of people that are working for you or depending on you for work and everything.
Well, and I would say that again, the girl, you know, Rose, has introduced herself to beyond just the person. Like, she introduces herself to his friend. So has she done this before? And so how do people don't be like, you know, this white chick, like,
has dated 20 black men and they've all disappeared.
I know. Well, no, and it's like, imagine the same guy, you know, his friend coming into the police station, and he's like, you know, this white girl took my friend, and they're like, kind of ha ha ha. What if there's like 15 other stories like that? Are you just a shitty detective to be like, oh wait, this is a reoccurring thing? Unless she's going to other areas, like if she's not, like she's spreading it out, like I don't know, like it's just like I thought about that too. I was like, how does no one know that this is happening?
See, and to be honest, getting back to the opening sequence, I know that it was the brother, you know, because it's the same car sort of thing. I know it was the brother, but see, I thought, this is the way I was thinking of it, is that he was going to meet her at her house, and he's looking for her property. That's why he was in that neighborhood, and that's when the brother takes him. And so, because he's like going, oh, I'm looking for the property, you know what I mean? He's like, he has the address here. He's in a suburban area. He doesn't know where he's going.
Oh yeah, because he did say he was meeting some girl, and his friend was like, "You meeting some white girl in the middle of the night?" Like something. He makes some comment, and I was like, "Oh my god!" So yeah, I wonder if she like hit him up and was like, "Come to my house," and blah 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 blah, and the brother was just like there waiting. Oh,
and see, that's how I saw the situation, and that's why I thought then the brother helped out with the situation.
Yeah, because she's attractive, so it's not like, you know, to me, she puts a little, you know, flirty picture on Tinder, and, you know, these guys, oh, okay, you know.
Yeah, I would have quite been interesting, you know, to hear like a bit. I mean, I don't want to see a backstory because that make the film very long, but it would be interesting to figure out the 5 months that they were together, because they were together for 5 months. Because he says 4 months, she said no, 5 months, because she has 5 months. What kind of relationship they had, and how well was she at playing this game, sort of thing? Because 5 months is a long time,
and that's a very patient buy right there. Because if you're trying to get, you know, you're trying to buy and sell and exchange like a black market thing, you want it like you want to be quick. However, yeah, exactly. You want to, yeah. I think it's like interesting because I feel like unless she was working multiple angles, right? Like she had multiple guys at the same time, and she was doing like, oh, I love you, honey, I got to go to work. And then she's meeting with another guy over here. And then she's meeting with that. Like she just is obviously very manipulative and was good at what she did. She's
and she felt, but she felt very at ease at his house when she was at his house. I mean, the way she was lounging on the sofa with the dog, and so obviously the relationship was quite hot and heavy for 5 months. So,
well, she did say when he was going into the floating space, she's like, "Well, you were one of my favorites."
Yeah, well, yeah, the float. That's all right. But then again, I mean, she slept with her grandfather, the guy who. Well, her grandfather.
I'm like, first of all, that. I'm like, so grandpa's going in the brain of a guy who fucked you. That's awesome. Like, that's really awesome. You know, I'm sure grandpa's gonna love that.
Well, she was friends with the grandmother, the body of the grandmother.
Yeah,
because there's that picture, because it shows a picture.
Friends is different. Friends is different than Lily banging a guy and then that going.
Well, I kind of wonder if it was maybe lesbian, because if she uses sex as a weapon.
Yeah, no, she's like totally like a Black Widow. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, but I don't, because I'd be on. But then again, because I was sitting there saying, if you're going to bring a friend in that kind of scenario, I've got to say that it's gonna be a lot harder than a lover. At least you can sit there and turn their head the way that you want to a certain extent. But a friend's gonna be a bit harder to convince. So
yeah.
A friend's like, I'm gonna go home now. I've had enough.
Yeah, she's like, I'm done. Well, I think they're almost like stuck because she drove, right? So each time you can't get away. You can't you're in the middle of nowhere.
I mean,
Uber's not going to come out there.
Well, to put an extra layer on it as well, if you're in the middle of white suburbia and you're black, and chances are you're not going to get very far once you get out there, because cops are probably going to pick you up. What are you doing here? Why are you here? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Where are you going? Who did you see? Who do you know? And then have to take you back to the house to verify that you actually came from there. You know what I mean? So, probably, kind of smart in a lot of ways, but yeah. I mean, I just learned that, if anything's ever too good to be true, there's something always wrong.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing is for free. Nothing is like, and I rely on trust your instincts, right? When something's really bad or something's going bad.
But I did kind of wonder about the relationship, as how much of it was love-based. I mean, I know that he said that he loved her and that she loved him, but there wasn't a lot of warmth in their relationship. You know what I mean?
No, yeah.
The thing is, there wasn't a lot of kissing and cuddling, or even when they're in bed together, they're kind of like, that's your side of the bed, this is my side of the bed. And
I feel like he just had issues that he was trying to work through, and I think for him,
his mom dying.
Yeah, with his mom dying, I think there was something maybe it stirred something in him, and I don't know, but I feel like he always had sort of issues with that right there. And then when he does open up to her, it's like one of these, did he open up to her, or did the mom open something up in him to open up to her? Like, because remember, after when she puts him in that space is when he's like, I'll tell you what happened with my mom, and then he said, then he tells her everything.
Sit there and say, damn, she's a fucking good psychiatrist. I mean, she is able just to jump right to the point without even like coaxing anyone into it.
Yeah.
I mean, hypnotizing someone in that matter. It's the first time I've actually seen it done that way.
Yeah. Well, I'm like, Jesus. Quick. Every time I see someone stirring a cup, I'm like going to run away from them. Ding, ding, ding.
Well, we're going to start doing that with our staff, with our listeners, so that way they actually listen to everything that we say.
If you hear a cup being stirred, just don't mind it. Just go in to the void.
I mean, I did like the idea that he's very, very intelligent. I think that helps.
Yeah,
it helps the movie along. I think
again, it breaks the norm of what most these types of films like. Usually the black guy dies. Like, literally, it's like I like it breaks the norm of he's a fighter. He fights his way through it, and he gets out of the situation.
I mean, overall, my final thought of the film overall, I think it's a strong film. I think it's a brilliant film. I think it's an excellent film, and I think it is a film that everyone should see. And I know that we've been talking about political, sociological, economic status here about things in general, but the film's not really about that. I think any time that I had sit there say that there is some pointing out here about things, but it doesn't do it in an overt way that it gets on your nerves. And I do think that if it does get on your nerves, I think that you personally need to look at yourself, and you might have a problem with yourself that you might want to check yourself, because there's nothing in the film that social signal. I mean, there is some political signaling here, and I think that, but it's done in such a way that it's done with humor, it's done with pathos, and it's not done by pointing your finger one way or another. And I think that's where he's very successful. And it actually made me have a lot of respect for Jordan Peele. In this country, we don't know a lot about Jordan Peele. His show doesn't come over here. Cow and Peele, I think it was he with? Who's he with? What's his comedy?
I think it's what's his? Yeah, I don't know.
K and Peele.
K&Peele, sorry.
And unfortunately, we didn't get that show over here, so I have no prior knowledge of him at all, except for this film sort of thing. And I think he knocked it out of the park. And I think it's a film that you can watch on repeat viewing. And I think that it raises questions, but at the same time, it doesn't raise his questions by pointing an accusatory finger at anyone, sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's what I quite like.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, this is his first movie out of the gate in this sort of genre, and I'm really looking forward to Us, which is coming out.
Yeah, me too. Definitely.
I just think he just does a great job in kind of just turning a mirror into people's faces to have them see themselves. And it's not like, as Keith was saying, if you have a problem with this, and you should evaluate yourself. You should evaluate your own personal social norms, and you should evaluate what you see and what you don't see. Like, if you constantly only see one side of things, nothing is ever one-sided. There's always multiple sides to things. And I think, it's being able to he did a good job being able to kind of turn that mirror around. But yeah, I really appreciate this movie. I really like it. I'm glad that we did talk about it, because what it does do is make people talk about sometimes uncomfortable subjects. Right. And I think that's part of the magic of this film, in my opinion, is it does get people talking. It does get people to kind of bring things to the surface and have those topics of conversation.
I do agree. I mean, I do agree that, I think if everyone just lifted everyone up and everyone just accepted everyone just for what they are and just leave it at that, I think, I was, at work, to digress a little bit, at work, we have boxes that we have to tick on our employment records. One of those is sexuality, ethnicity, and religion. And I refuse to tick any of those boxes, because I think it's those boxes that's actually what's ruining everything. I think once you start dividing everything up into nice little boxes and little shapes, I think that's where I think that people should just be who they are, and that's it. Yeah. Just,
it makes it easier to put people in those boxes, right? So if you take all the boxes away, you can't put anyone in any boxes. You're human, you're a human being and trying to live a life and be happy and, yes, lift each other up.
I think those boxes are there to make people pat themselves on the box and go, look how diverse we are at work. I think that's what they're there for. It's like, oh, aren't we doing a fantastic job? It's like,
yeah.
Well, why don't you just sit there and say that we got everyone from every unit and just leave it at that? Why do you need to add up the numbers?
Yeah.
Why are you adding up the numbers?
Yeah. It's a statistical thing, and it's like,
and what does it matter?
It doesn't matter, yeah.
I mean, I know that sometimes as far as religion concerned, and sometimes ethnicity as far as medical concerns, that sometimes there are some diseases or there's some dietary reasons that, there's certain that go on because of the differences.
Yeah.
But at the same time, can't you just put what those differences are without actually ticking a box?
Yeah, I agree.
So,
as you take a brisk stroll down the street lined with white picket fences, you notice that each of the houses are strikingly similar. Even the people who live in these tiny suburb stuccoed houses go about their days with a plaster grin of a "how you doing" expression. Something just doesn't feel right, and as you return home, you walk into your immaculate kitchen to see the unimaginable. Your spouse is hovering over their laptop, gazing blankly at the screen. "Honey, are you okay?" you ask. "Why, yes, I'm just fine. Fine. As they glitch on, you move them aside and you look at the screen. You can't take your eyes off the website at llpodcast.com, where you're compelled to check out all of our past episodes, join our social and podcast platforms, as well as become a patron, and read our reviews of books to screens and everything in between. And while you're there, you also sign up for our monthly newsletter, where you'll get a nifty limited season 1 t-shirt. Now filled with your new purpose, you're overcome with joy when you see that for our next podcast, we'll be finishing off the theme of the month, Love Will Keep Us Together, where we will be covering Alfred Hitchcock's film, Marnie. Your smile goes wide and you begin to repeat, "Thank you for downloading, sharing, and liking the Literary License Podcast. Have a good day."
Bye. I'll just die if I don't have that podcast. I'll just die if I don't have that podcast.
I'll just die if I don't have that podcast.
I didn't bake anything yesterday. It took me so long to get the upstairs floor to shine. I didn't have any time to bake.
Well, you don't have to bake, kid. There's no law.
Well,
Ed's lucky if I remember to keep him in white bread.
Easy on spray starch. It must save me half an hour a day at least. You'll never run short of time again, I guarantee it.
I've just been tempted so many times to try Easy On.
I'm not trying to be a leader or anything, but we're not supposed to delve quite so specifically into housework.
Easy On's really that good, is it?
Is it that good? Well, if time is your enemy, make friends with Easy On. That's all I can tell you. It's so good that if ever I became famous in Easy On, not only would I do it, I'd do it for free. That's how good it is.
Dream, dream, or hibernate. She folds her napkin on her plate. Sad days will go away. I'm sad again, and somewhere they don't bother with the Stepford Wives. They file their nails and sharpen knives to carve their numbers on the wall. And all you ever have to do is call.
If you're going to tell me you don't like this dress, I'm sticking my head right in the oven. They bought it for me for the weekend. He spent a ton on me. How about the shape? And uplift bra? It's true what they say in cats. Oh, Joanna, Dave turned me loose and burned off, and I was mad.
Uppers down. Bad nights that never end. And brightly stickers recommend. Don't bother with the Stepford Wives. They wash their hair and bat their eyes. Dream about another day. And all you ever have to do is stay.
Bobby, stop it! Look at me! Say I'm right! You are different, your figure's different, your face, what you talk about, all of this is different.
Bother with the Stepford Wives. File their nails and sharpen knives. Carve their numbers on the wall. And all you ever have to do is call. And all you ever have to do is call. And all you ever have to do is call.
Not to mention that creepy men's association. Yours too? Every night. Dave wouldn't miss. What do you think they do up there? Watch dirty movies and reminisce about the good old days. What good old days? Like those good old days when Playboy used the airbrush.